Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850... Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Very good afternoon to you. It's 3 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show on GB News. We're broadcasting for you. Yes, we're back live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, as Donald Trump slaps tariffs on Britain and the European Union, I'll set out why our Prime Minister should thank Nigel Farage that we left the European Union and say 3 cheers Keir for Brexit. And our reporters are in steel factories across the UK getting the latest reaction.
I'm in a factory in Northern Ireland, one of Britain's major manufacturers and exporters. It uses thousands of tonnes of steel per year and creates hundreds of jobs. They're asking politicians, what help can they receive?
And Doogie will expertly set out why those EU tariffs will hammer Northern Ireland. And the Amess family are at Downing Street today to meet the Prime Minister just days after the Labour Party rejected their demands for a full judge-led public inquiry into the beloved MP's murder. On today's show, we'll speak with Sir David's daughter, Katie. And the Shadow Justice Minister, Robert Jenrick, has claimed Labour's soft justice is leading to a boom in crime as shoplifters and even stalkers laugh in the face of our justice system. I'll be joined in the studio live from Westminster by Mr. Jenrick later in the show. And ding ding, an altercation today broke out between Reform's Lee Anderson and Steve Stop Brexit Bray today as the Ashfield MP was intercepted by Bray outside of Parliament. Now, I had a ringside seat to the Battle of the Brexit Heavyweights. Stand by for my exclusive video. Welcome to the show. Always a pleasure to have your company. So, yeah, it kicked off outside Parliament today. Lee Anderson left Prime Minister's questions. I'd also been there with my colleague Nigel Nelson. And Steve Bray spotted Lee Anderson walking across Parliament Square and took to his PA and started to verbally abuse him all across the public atmosphere. Anybody could hear him calling a liar, a thug, a cheat. And then he was intercepted. And let's just say things got a bit spicy. I've got the exclusive video coming up on the show. Steve Bray, still a thing. Get the full reaction to that. And also Brexit. Is our Prime Minister, should he be thankful of the fact we left the European Union? Because the European Union is about to get hammered by Donald Trump on all of those trade tariffs. Get in touch the usual way, gbnews.com/you'll say. But now's your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you. Your top stories this hour. And in the last half an hour, Defence Secretary John Healey has met with counterparts from France, Germany, Poland and Italy in Paris for more talks on Ukraine. The talks come as Donald Trump's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, has ramped up pressure on the Russian president to accept a 30-day ceasefire deal with Ukraine organised by the US. Rubio says the US hopes to have a positive answer from Russia, adding he would urge Vladimir Putin to end all hostilities so, quote, people will stop dying. He said there's no military solution to the conflict and that the US will speak with Russia today. President Zelensky hailed what he called constructive talks and says he wants to use a potential 30-day ceasefire as a chance to draft a permanent peace plan, which could include security guarantees. Sir Keir Starmer hailed Ukraine's backing for those ceasefire proposals as a remarkable breakthrough. Well, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, welcomed the news of a ceasefire deal.
Well, I think it's a remarkable breakthrough, and it's testament to the work between President Trump and President Zelensky in recent days. And it now really means the ball is in Russia's court. It's for Russia to now respond to the ceasefire proposal, Russia to agree to that deal that's on the table, and we will continue to play our role as an honest broker. So the Prime Minister is looking to convene world leaders this Saturday to continue playing the role the UK has been playing to try and move us towards peace in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Well, the Prince of Wales will travel to Estonia next week to visit British troops involved in NATO operations there as part of Britain's drive to show solidarity with its allies and highlight its commitment to the defence of the alliance's eastern flank. During the two-day visit, Prince William will also carry out engagements in the capital, Tallinn, to learn more about how the country has responded to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Sir Keir Starmer says the UK would keep all options on the table to respond to the US President's decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. The Business Secretary described Donald Trump's decision to impose the global tariffs as disappointing. The industry has also warned President Trump's tariffs on UK steel couldn't come at a worse time. And a short time ago, Canada has announced $20 billion retaliatory tariffs on the US. The European Union also announced it's implementing counter-tariffs on £21.6 billion worth of goods. Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons that the UK would keep the option of retaliatory measures open after President Trump announced those 25% tariffs.
Like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Well, Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey has said this afternoon that the UK should respond with retaliatory tariffs.
The UK should be very tough and robust, like the Canadians, like the Europeans. We should have retaliatory tariffs. We have to show President Trump this is bad for the American economy, bad for the British economy, and bad for the global economy.
And can we trust Trump? Is he a reliable ally?
Well, Trump is not a reliable ally. All the evidence is very, very clear. That's why we have to be robust. We have to join others, whether it's our Commonwealth allies like Canada, our European allies, and send very strong signals. Our steel industry, our metal industry is really important to our country, and it's so wrong that he should be doing this to one of America's closest allies.
Elsewhere, former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced she will not seek re-election to Holyrood next year. Ms Sturgeon, who represents the Glasgow Southside constituency, made the announcement today. In a letter to local SNP members, she said she'll be with the SNP every step of the way towards independence, despite stepping down as an MSP. Sturgeon resigned as First Minister in March 2023, after 8 years in the role. And the arrested captain of the Solong, the container ship involved in the crash in the North Sea, is a Russian national, according to the vessel's owners. Humberside police said the 59-year-old man remained in custody after being arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter yesterday. A missing crew member from the cargo ship is presumed dead after a search and rescue operation was called off late on Monday. 36 people were rescued and taken safely to shore. Humberside police said it had begun a criminal investigation into the cause of the collision and was working with the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Martin.
Thank you, Katie. Now let's get on with the show. The UK has not been spared Donald Trump's tariff war, as the American president has slapped a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminium exports to the States from the United Kingdom. And here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say on the matter at PMQs earlier on today.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed. But we will keep all options on the table.
Now, for its part, the British steel industry has responded with dismay, saying the levy couldn't come at a worse time. Have some reaction now on the ground. Let's get out into the provinces and cross now to GB News' Yorkshire and Humber reporter Anna Riley and GB News' Northern Ireland reporter Dougie Beattie, who are both at steel factories and plants. Anna Riley, let's first go to you. What's the reaction there on the ground?
Good afternoon, Martin. Well, we're here in Scunthorpe. British Steel, Chinese owned, but it's the beating heart of Scunthorpe. British Steel and steel making has been at the heart of this town for 160 years. It goes back in generations of families that people come and work at these steelworks. 4,000 people are employed directly here at British Steel in Scunthorpe, and it's not just the people that are employed here as well, but it's the wider economy, the wider plants that rely on British Steel, even going down to the cafes and the shops that workers here come to on their lunch breaks that fuel that wider economy. And certainly any potential tariffs here could impact the steel industry and impact jobs. Now, earlier I spoke to the leader of North Lincolnshire Council, and this is what he had to say.
A lot unknown about what President Trump's trying to achieve with this. Clearly, he's trying to protect his own steel industry when the government here should be doing exactly the same as he's doing, not by setting tariffs, but by making sure there's an even playing field for steel making in this country. And that means controlling energy prices, making sure we can have access to markets. And if I was Keir Starmer today, what I'd be doing is getting on a plane, going to see President Trump, showing how our world-class steel is important to his economy and how he's going to need it for, for construction, for making sure that he'll need it for his railway investment that he's trying to continue with. And also, more importantly, that would enable us to protect jobs here in Scunthorpe.
Rob Waltham there, the leader of North Lincolnshire Council. And certainly it's not the first time that jobs have been at threat here. In 2023, there was an announcement that the traditional blast furnaces could close to be replaced by electric arc furnaces, potentially giving up to 2,000 job losses due to that. And not just the job losses as well, but removing the ability for steelworks like this one in Scunthorpe and Britain to make its own virgin steel. So certainly a lot of concerns here. Scunthorpe is synonymous with steel, and any threats to jobs here or the steel industry will have a real impact on the town.
Anna Riley, excellent there from Scunthorpe. Steel is a strategic industry, should be protected. Now let's go to Northern Ireland, Dougie Beattie. Dougie, you've been bang on the money all along about why these European Union tariffs will impact businesses in Northern Ireland, proving we never really left the regulatory orbit of Brussels. Over to you.
Yes, well, exactly, and I'm here with a major manufacturer in Northern Ireland. They make generators, but of course Northern Ireland also makes about 70% of the world's quarry crushing equipment, and they export a lot of that, about £2 billion worth, to the United States of America. Now, Northern Ireland has been different from the rest of the UK because Europe protected its own markets, and of course Northern Ireland was held inside that market after the protocol or framework document, and politicians here agreed to it. It's now going to bite them very hard because Northern Ireland already has to pay 25% tariffs on British steel that comes in, so our manufacturers have to use European steel, and if Europe responds and Northern Ireland gets caught in that trade war, we may have to pay up to 50% tariffs on steel that's going into the States. How does that affect the rest of the UK? Well, this factory in particular gets most of its components from the Midlands in England, and they support hundreds of jobs there. So if they are hit with tariffs going into the States, of course that will also bring in jobs in the United Kingdom that supply factories such as this one. And this is causing a real problem because we are very much seen as the EU. We have no rights to set our own tariffs, or we are held by European commissioners and they set exactly what we are doing. Northern Ireland is in a very, very risky position at this moment.
Dougie Beattie, you've been absolutely bang on this right from the start, neatly proving, as you did with farming, now with steel, Northern Ireland still within the orbit of Brussels. Dougie Beattie from Northern Ireland, Anna Riley from Scunthorpe, excellent reporting as ever. Thank you very, very much. Now let's get back to Westminster and dive into the politics of all of this. I'm joined by GB News' political editor Chris Hope and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. And I was at PMQs with you earlier on. More of that in a bit. Let's get into the politics of this. For now, at PMQs today, Sir Keir Starmer seemed to hint there would not be any retaliatory tariffs against Donald Trump, and that's the opposite of what the European Union have done. They seem to be getting into a trade war, and can we conclude, I think sensibly, it's a good idea not to be getting in a trade war with Donald Trump at this stage?
That seems to be where the government is. Now, they view these tariffs as global tariffs, not ones aimed at the UK. 25% on steel and aluminium exports across the board, UK, EU, and so it goes on. Now, there's been a briefing by the Number 10 spokesman since I was last on air. They're saying here that, as the PM said in the House, these are global tariffs, not targeted at the UK, as I say. From the UK's perspective, we'll look at all options, keep all options on the table, but they're prioritising engagement with the US, and they're to stand up for British industry and find a resolution. They're looking at a wider economic deal, a kind of sort of like a trade deal, but not a full-fat trade deal, if you excuse my milk metaphors, but a trade deal all the same. They don't want this row about steel to get in the way of the bigger idea, which is a trade deal being outside the European Union. But as you were saying earlier, being outside the European Union is exactly what we can do.
And Nigel Nelson, it gives me great glee at this point to say to you, Sir Keir Starmer must be very grateful for Brexit, for what the work Nigel Farage did, because we're not going to get caught in any trade war with the EU if Donald Trump decides to up the levies against the EU, as he has with China, Mexico, Canada. Most likely that is going to happen because the EU have responded with tit-for-tat tariffs. So Brexit, Sir Keir Starmer should be saying 3 cheers, Keir. Well, 3 cheers for Brexit.
Certainly this is a Brexit benefit.
Hey, look at this. I got it.
Finally said it. Yeah, I have to admit that. When it comes to tariffs at the moment, while it's a tragedy for anybody whose job is threatened by it in, say, Scunthorpe or Northern Ireland, in a macroeconomic terms, it's not huge. That steel represents 0.1% of our GDP and 0.1% of jobs.
Sadly. I mean, it should be more.
It should be more. It should be more. And we've been running down industry for years. So it's not a major impact. So I think that I agree with Chris that what Keir Starmer is doing is let's play it cool at the moment. Let's not retaliate. Let's see if we can get some kind of trade deal ourselves.
Good. Now, I'll get a chart on screen now. Let's quickly get this chart on screen. This shows us the trade deficits between the United Kingdom and the European Union. For those who can't see it, I'll explain. Britain carries a trade surplus of $15 billion a year. That means that we take more goods from America than we export. But look at the European Union, a trade deficit of $150 billion. Tariffs quite clearly will hammer the European Union as a collective there, Chris Hope, because they're 27 times in this game and they are in a pickle. This is a clear Brexit benefit. And let me put it to you, actually, we should go a stage further. We should declare British steel a strategic national interest. Why not offer to buy all the steel we can make in Britain? Why not put it into all the houses, Sir Keir Starmer is going to say, and say, don't worry about Trump's tariffs. We'll take all the steel, we'll buy British, we'll build back better, all the stuff they promised to do. And by the way, net zero did more harm to our steel industry than Donald Trump's tariffs ever could.
Well, part of the problem is that we are trying to go into a more of a green manufactured steel as we approach our net zero targets. And that's, I think, where this comes from. You can't just repurpose steel. There's different grades of steel. Yeah. Some of the steel, a lot of steel we make is high quality steel, which that's why it goes to certain bespoke markets in America. So you couldn't really, I mean, you can say perhaps reshore the steel we're sending overseas, maybe.
Well, most of our coking steel, the best steel, we can't do because Port Talbot shut down because of net zero targets. We export our carbon problem to China. No, net zero caused all of that damage. That's my point.
It's important to see where the US comes from. They see our VAT we put on products as a form of tariffs. They say, why are you charging 20% on items that we sell into the UK? Yes. That's not fair. So they view VAT as a form of tariff. That's why I think it's a bit more sophisticated than the issue of steel and aluminium, and that's why I think the UK government, I think correctly, is saying it's a global issue. Let's try and get a better deal on everything for the UK before we go into battle with Donald Trump.
I think you're absolutely right. Now then, moving on, earlier on today there was a bit of a scuffle between Reform MP Lee Anderson and the anti-Brexit protester, that man, Stop Brexit, Steve Bray, in Westminster. Take a look at my video.
500 people. How many parties have you been in, Lee? You just jumped ship.
And we're doing another party in a bit. Guess what?
That's assault. No. He went for me.
A thug.
He just
nothing but a thug.
No, he did. He went for me.
Now listen, easy options. He's a thug. You need arresting.
You're a coward, a liar, a cheat. It's on camera.
So there we go. It's fair to say, kicked off. Chris, let's talk to you. I was there. I was at PMQs with my colleague Nigel, walking back with Lee Anderson across Parliament Square. Lee was going to a meeting down towards Downing Street. He was spotted by Bray. Bray was on his PA, shouting across for everybody to hear that he was a coward, a thug, a thief, and he intercepted Lee when they crossed, and then it was man bags at dawn. What's your take on all this?
Well, really, I mean, Steve Bray is a campaigner. He's been outside Parliament on Wednesdays playing his eclectic choices in music, protesting about Brexit, one song called Zombie. He plays a revolutionary song. He plays a pastiche of other songs, often mocking the Tories and the rest. So there he is down the screen now, winning his Stop Brexit hat. I did note how Lee Anderson looked at your camera before he went for the hat. I think he wanted to check you were filming. Now, I've been out to see Steve Bray since this happened, Martin, and he said the following to GBNews about Lee Anderson. He likes the attention. I like to show him up. Well, I think they both like the attention, Lee Anderson and Steve Bray.
Yeah, well, I got a response from Lee Anderson. He said this professional nuisance is a menace to upstanding political figures like myself. The sooner this individual is carted off to the job centre, the better. Nigel Nelson, it's a bit of fun. Or is it? I mean, Lee was just going about his ordinary business. Steve Bray seems to be a professional provocateur. Is this just man bags at dawn? Or actually, if this was happening to members of the Labour Party, would this be a more serious issue?
No, I think it's man bags at dawn. I mean, Steve Bray has got every right to protest, but for those of us who work in Parliament, it really is a nuisance. If you're writing away, I'm actually opposite him from my parliamentary office to Winston Churchill's statue, where he hangs around an awful lot, blaring music, as Chris has spoken about. It is a real nuisance. You get very fed up with Steve Bray, but he does have the right to be there. I think that Brexit has come and gone. It's an old issue. It's historical. What he hasn't got the right to do is to insult members of Parliament, or indeed, as we've seen from that film, to assault them.
Now, it's fair to say that Lee did attempt to de-hat him. He tried to flip that hat off his head, and he has flipped that hat off his head before. I said to Lee, what happened there? He said, I think it was glued on. It wouldn't come off. It was a bit of tit for tat. But I put it to you, he's like one of these Japanese soldiers that's still fighting. Well, no, Brexit's gone.
So, well, let's not say Japanese soldiers. Let's say Lib Dems. They want to go. I think it's one of the single mark in their manifesto from last summer. They want to re-enter or look at re-entering. I think the single market. Nigel, you might correct me.
Yes, that's
one of the two legs.
They have gone quiet on that since the election.
Yeah, so it's not just Steve Bray, but I think the world has moved on. There's only about 2 or 3 people, maybe 10, on the day of PMQs with European flags flying. I think we are all moving on. Even this government has got a triple lock on Brexit. To remind you briefly, not going to single market, customs union, or allow freedom of movement, bits of which may be negotiated away as we renegotiate the trading cooperation agreement this year, next year.
On the day that the comet strikes Earth, Steve Bray will still be shouting, "Stop Brexit!" In fact, he'll probably blame Brexit for the comet. Gentlemen, great fun, great start to the show. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, up next, in yet another blow to rural Britain, the government seems to have thrown our farmers yet another curveball. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
Headliners on GB News 11 p.m. every night. It's got 3 top comedians going through the next day's newspapers so you don't have to read them, which is great.
That's a good point. He's lying. I mean, maybe he's not lying.
That's Headliners every night from 11 p.m. and 5 a.m. as well on GB News, Britain's news channel.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
I developed achalasia when I was 17, but achalasia can impact people of all ages. So what I experienced when I first developed achalasia was essentially when I was eating, food was getting stuck here, so in my esophagus, and it just really wouldn't go down. So you know when you're eating a piece of bread, a big piece of bread really fast, and it kind of gets stuck and you need water. That was my first symptom. And that was happening every now and again when I was eating, but then it started happening every time I was swallowing. So that made eating incredibly difficult and painful. And I used to have to drink, well, I still do drink a lot of water whilst I'm eating, but I was really having to gulp loads of water, and it was really painful at every gulp. And that led to quite a lot of weight loss. So a lot of people with achalasia, because of the difficulties they experience in swallowing, they lose weight because either they avoid food or they're regurgitating food as well, so they have to kind of get it out, and so it can be really unpleasant. Obviously, you experience a lot of pain, and it impacts on every part of your social life as well, and on your general life. People end up being malnourished, losing loads of weight, and that impacts on your everyday life and work life as well. And then people, unfortunately, also, get very fatigued, experience anxiety and depression as well. So those are the impacts of achalasia.
What are the treatments? What can people do if they're suffering with this condition? What can they do?
So, I mean, obviously the first step is to get a diagnosis, and that's already quite difficult because there's low awareness of achalasia, even amongst the medical community. Getting a diagnosis can be complicated and can take quite a long time, and people can get misdiagnosed. In terms of treatment, so there is no cure.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, though.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Your time is 3:26 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, farmers seem to have been handed yet another curveball thrown their way today by the government as post-Brexit subsidies paid to boost food production have been paused without warning. Well, joining me now is the farmer Andrew Ward. Andrew, always a pleasure to have your company. It seems it never rains, but it pours for you farmers. Inheritance tax yesterday, it was land grabs by Angela Rayner, and now it's sustainable farming targets. Tell us what they are, tell us how many farmers got them, and why this is yet another blow for the farming industry.
Well, the problem we've got is that, as you said, Martin, we just seem to be continually hit one thing after another. I'm stood at the moment in the middle of an open field in Lincolnshire. Over my shoulder on my right, we have got what we call a countryside stewardship area that's in this SFI. So the SFI is the thing that's all up for debate at the moment, the sustainable farming incentive, and that's a scheme where we put environmental areas into it. We get paid to do them, and they're in areas, sometimes they've been in a long while, such as these behind me. It benefits wildlife, it benefits the environment, it benefits nature. But all of a sudden, the government has said, as of 6 p.m. last night, they are stopping any more applications for it. Now, they should be giving 6 weeks' notice that they're going to do this. They gave half an hour's notice, and that is all. We've been in these schemes now for 20 years. There's been various schemes, various options, and they were brought in that when we came out of the EU and we stopped receiving the payments from the European Union, this was an alternative scheme. And we were told that it's a scheme that we could manage ourselves, that we would be bespoke to every farmer in the country. And a lot of farmers went into them because we all want to help the environment as well as producing food. And then for it to suddenly get knocked on the head, it is another massive hammer blow to us. But it's not also a hammer blow to farmers, Martin. It's a hammer blow to wildlife, because over the years we've built up lots of wildlife on the farm. We have feeders all around the area where we have songbird feeders. We encourage songbirds to feed, and all these things are going to suffer. It's not just farmers, it's wildlife is going to suffer massively. And I just don't know why the government are trying to do this. They've got this vendetta against farming, against the countryside, and they just keep turning the screw and turning the screw even more. And it just cannot go on.
Andrew Ward superbly summed up as ever, and it's curious to note that the Green lobby are furious about this. As you said, this is about biodiversity, it's about improving the ecosystem on farms, it's about paying farmers to put land to wilding, a key European Union initiative which the Greens liked, now being withdrawn. Another blow for farmers. Andrew Ward, we're going to have to leave it there. Thanks for joining us there from live down on the farm in Lincolnshire. Looks beautiful behind you there. Always a pleasure. Now, earlier on today, Sir Keir Starmer at PMQs insisted that Labour were setting out a roadmap for farmers.
We do support farmers. We will be putting forward more details at the spending review. But the difference, Mr. Speaker, in this government is we're funding the farmers. They failed to spend the budget.
Sultana. Nigel Nelson, it's got to be said, farmers are feeling very, very hard done by. It seems that they would say it's one blow after another. Inheritance tax grabs, yesterday compulsory land purchases. This was an initiative you think the Labour Party would agree with. It's about improving the environment, farmers being paid to do so. Now they're putting the money away. It never rains, but it pours.
Yeah, but in fairness, this was something that's always going to come to an end. I mean, the idea of it was that when we left the EU, the subsidies would be maintained by the British government that the EU had previously been giving, but that wasn't open-ended. So I am surprised that it seemed to have happened without any notice, the actual ending, but certainly it was expected. We all, if you like, we talked about a Brexit bonus. This is a Brexit deficit. We all complained about the common agricultural policy when we were a member of the EU. This was one of the benefits of it because it gave subsidies for farmers to do exactly what we've just heard.
But they've pulled the rug on another source of funding, and it goes against the government's biodiversity and green targets. And as you said, they found out very short notice. I got a call from a furious farmer at 6 o'clock last night. They literally found out via a press release, and I can't even tell you what he said. Nigel, we have to leave it there. Thank you very, very much, because Robert Jenrick has just walked into the studio. He's coming up next. I'll be joined by the Shadow Justice Secretary, Robert Jenrick, in the studio next to discuss what he's saying is soft justice. He's accusing the Labour Party of being soft on hardened criminals, leading to a boom in shoplifting, a boom in stalking, and far, far worse. That's next. But first is your headlines with Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you. Your top stories this hour. Defence Secretary John Healey has met with counterparts from France, Germany, Poland and Italy in Paris this afternoon for more talks on Ukraine. The talks come as Donald Trump's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, has ramped up pressure on the Russian president to accept a 30-day ceasefire deal with Ukraine organised by the US. Rubio says the US hopes to have a positive answer from Russia, adding he would urge Vladimir Putin to end all hostilities so, quote, people will stop dying. He said there's no military solution to the conflict and that the US will speak with Russia today. President Zelensky hailed what he called constructive talks and says he wants to use a potential 30-day ceasefire as a chance to draft a permanent peace plan which could include security guarantees. Sir Keir Starmer hailed Ukraine's backing for those ceasefire proposals as a remarkable breakthrough. Well, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, welcomed the news of that ceasefire deal.
Well, I think it's a remarkable breakthrough, and it's testament to the work between President Trump and President Zelensky in recent days. And it now really means the ball is in Russia's court. It's for Russia to now respond to the ceasefire proposal, Russia to agree to that deal that's on the table, and we will continue to play our role as an honest broker. So the Prime Minister is looking to convene world leaders this Saturday to continue playing the role the UK has been playing to try and move us towards peace in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Elsewhere, Sir Keir Starmer says the UK would keep all options on the table to respond to the US President's decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. The Business Secretary described Donald Trump's decision to impose those global tariffs as disappointing. The UK steel industry has also warned that the tariffs couldn't come at a worse time. A short time ago, Canada announced $20 billion retaliatory tariffs on the US. The European Union also announced that it is implementing counter-tariffs of £21.6 billion worth of goods. Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons that the UK would keep the option of retaliatory measures open after President Trump announced 25% tariffs.
Like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed. But we will keep all options on the table.
Those are your latest GB News headlines for now. More from me in half an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
Here's a quick snapshot of today's markets. The pound will buy you $1.2945 and €1.1864. The price of gold is £2,259.84 per ounce, and the FTSE 100's at 8,522 points.
Crash Law 24 sponsors the GB News Finance Report.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. In County Durham, the road between Middlesbrough and Sedgefield is slower in the Wynyard area where there are roadworks affecting the A689 Hartlepool Road each way. There is still a delay into Derbyshire on the M1 going north where 2 lanes remain closed near Chesterfield at junction 29. In the West Midlands, an ongoing lane closure affecting the M5 south, so you're getting through at 3 Halesowen with a short delay. Cambridgeshire, repairs are ongoing affecting the A14 between Thrapston and Huntingdon. It's at the King Bolton turnoff at junction 16 where there are restrictions. And Bristol, emergency repairs affecting Brunel Way through Ashton Gate where 1 lane is closed from the Jessup underpass to the Plimsoll Swing Bridge. Expected to be finished before evening peak starts. It's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Well, taking care of your skin and body is one of the best ways to get in shape for the warmer days ahead. But what are the celeb secrets behind a glow-up? And what latest trends are the A-listers following to look and feel their best? Well, joining us now to share some of those secrets is the founder of Celebrity Skin Talk, Scott McGlynn. Scott, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Hello.
Right, so
Spill it.
Here we go.
All your secrets. Well, the main thing is hydration, okay? We've heard it so many times before. Having water daily is a must. I have 15 cups of water a day. It's a must.
What size cup are we talking? Like one of these little ones?
Well, the regular, you know, a bit more bigger than that.
A bit bigger than that. Okay.
Yes.
Well, I knew you were coming, Scott, so
Right.
I came prepared today so you wouldn't tell me off. I've got my big bottle of water.
Check it out.
2 of these a day.
Yeah, and yours is time, which is really cool.
Yeah, it is. It has all my times. I am slightly behind, but then I have been presenting a news show for the last hour and 40 minutes. So,
so you're forgiving.
So I'm cracking on. Aside from water, what else can we be doing to protect our skin? That's the thing that I'm really big on. I wear Factor 50 on my face every day.
Really?
Every single day.
So even in the winter?
Yeah. No matter what, because the UV is still coming through, isn't it? No matter what time of year it is. So it's so important. I'm 27 now. Give my age away on the telly there. But I'm 27 and I think skincare at a young age is so important. So Please agree with me and say.
Yeah,
Please tell me I'm doing the right thing.
hydration, what else do we need to do?
Well, the hydration, the SPF is a good point, OK? So I'm Celtic all over. So I'm Welsh, Scottish, Irish, so me and the sun do not go on.
Likewise,
So I'm always a 50 person anyway. If it's raining, snowing, whatever the weather, still wear your SPF. It's a must. And people do not know that the UV rays from our phones, our flat screens, TVs, this is aging us.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back. Time is 3:38 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, you're now seeing moments ago the US President Donald Trump. He welcomed the Irish Premier Michael Martin to the White House. There he is now at the time of the Irish Premier to visit that place where we've seen all sorts of dramas. Keir Starmer, of course, handed a letter from the King, and Volodymyr Zelensky, well, he left with his tail between his legs. And now it's the Irish Premier's turn to visit that historic office on the day, indeed, when Donald Trump has slapped 20% tariffs on steel and aluminium from the EU. In they go. That'll be a very interesting conversation. Now, moving on back to Britain, the Shadow Justice Secretary Robert Jenrick has claimed that prolific criminals are popping champagne corks at the possibility of light sentences under Labour's new plans. I'm delighted to be joined in the studio by the man himself, Robert Jenrick. Robert, welcome to the show. So
Good afternoon.
Pleasure to have you. Two things to talk about. First of all, measures out this week, two-tiered sentencing. Allegations. The law goes live, is it April the 1st? April Fool's Day, that white heterosexual men could face stiffer justice under Labour laws. That first, and then tell us about your video you have out about repeat offending.
Yeah, so new guidelines by the Sentencing Council were published last week that we uncovered, and they create a two-tiered justice system. It means that you're more likely to be treated leniently, less likely to go to jail if you are trans, if you are a woman, if you're from an ethnic minority, if you're from a faith minority group, which basically means anyone who isn't Christian. This is blatant bias against men, against Christians, and it's got to stop. In 20 days' time, this becomes the law of the land. What I've done is present a bill to Parliament that rejects these biased two-tier guidelines and gives the Secretary of State, the Justice Secretary, the power to change this and ensure that we don't live in a country where you and I will be treated differently to somebody of a different colour skin or a different faith. That is completely wrong. We believe in equality under the law.
And Lady Justice should be blind. A lot of people saying these laws say that's not the case. Now, let's talk us about a video you have out into repeat offending and a boom in shoplifting. Tell us about that.
Well, shoplifting is at a record high last year. And in London, the number of mobile phones being stolen was the highest ever level. You know, people think this is only going to get worse. We see it in our daily lives. There's a sense that these crimes are almost being decriminalised. And a small number of hyper-prolific thieves are responsible for a large number of these crimes. In fact, 8% of criminals are responsible for more than 50% of all the crimes. So a commonsensical criminal justice system would get the police to go and arrest these hyper-prolific thieves rather than tackling issues like so-called non-crime hate incidents that are a waste of resources. And then the courts would ensure these people go down for longer, get them off our streets, give the public breathing space from all of this crime. But the Labour government are proposing to do precisely the opposite to that. They are saying that they're considering scrapping short sentences. And when I asked the Justice Secretary during the week if she could reassure the public that she is not going to do that for burglary, for theft, for shoplifting, she wouldn't give us an answer. So I think that Labour is going to get rid of these short sentences, and hyper-prolific thieves, the people causing all of this harm on our streets, they will be celebrating. They once again will be popping champagne corks.
And do you think the Labour Party might say in response, well, we haven't got enough prison spaces, we're handing out non-custodial sentences because we don't have the capacity to bang people up? And is that the problem? Is the answer to build more NICs? Is the answer to be tougher? Or is this a drug problem issue? How many of these people are addicted to drugs and are having repeat offences, stealing phones, breaking into people's houses to fuel their drug addiction? And can we tackle it that way?
Well, I think we should be building more prisons. We haven't built enough as a country, and we should be doing it faster and cheaper than we do today. We should be getting the foreign national offenders out of our prisons. You know,
About 10,000.
There are over 10,000 foreign people in our prisons. They need to be sent home, and we should be using every lever of the British state to make sure that happens. You know, we shouldn't be giving foreign aid to a country if they won't take back murderers and rapists and paedophiles. We should be giving them visas so they can come and enjoy life in the UK, or their kids can go to university here. Use the power of the British state to fix this problem, free up capacity in our prisons, and use that to lock up these hyper-prolific thieves that are causing havoc on our streets.
OK, Robert Jenrick, I've got a spokesperson here, a Ministry of Justice spokesperson has issued this statement in response. I'd like to get your reaction to that, if I could. Statement says this: the new government inherited a justice system in crisis. Days away from running out of prison places, reoffending rates were too high and prisons had become a breeding ground for crime. This government took immediate action to address the crisis in our jails, and we will build 14,000 new prison places. So Mr Jenrick, quite clearly here, the Labour Party is saying, well, the Conservatives left the country in a mess. Capacity was at a crisis point because of your government. They're in power, but they're blaming you.
Well, look, I think there was a problem in the prisons and we should have built more places. But there were other things you could do rather than release prisoners early onto our streets. I mean, you might remember that Keir Starmer said there was no free capacity in the prisons, and then when the riots happened, he suddenly found hundreds of extra places. He wasn't straining every sinew to stop these dangerous criminals getting back onto the streets. For ideological reasons, he was too quick to put them out there. He should be making sure we get the foreign offenders out of this country, back home, and using those places to lock up these hyper-prolific thieves that are responsible for so much harm in our country right now.
Nigel Nelson, I'd like to bring you in for a bit of reaction here. You were at PMQs today, as were you, Mr Jones, and was myself. We all were. And that phrase came back on this precise issue today to haunt the Prime Minister. Two-tier here. He was called that again in Chamber because of what many people are saying, including Mr Jenrick. Quite clear there is two-tier justice. If you're Muslim, if you're an ethnic minority, if you're transsexual, you're LGBTQ, you've got to get a softer sentence than if you're white or you're Christian. That's wrong.
It doesn't mean you're going to be let off. And the whole point about the Sentencing Council is that you have broadly uniform sentences across the country. To achieve that, they've got to be independent. So government shouldn't be in a position then to interfere with that. Otherwise, there's no point having the Sentencing Council. When it comes down to short sentences, I mean, it's not just Robert who said this. I mean, people from his own party have talked about this before. David Gauke, when he was Justice Secretary, Ken Clarke, they both said that sentences below 6 months really a bit pointless, and that would free up an awful lot of prison space if you weren't sending people to prison for such short times.
But your reaction to that would be, if they know they're not going to get a prison sentence, they're more likely to reoffend. It's a vicious circle.
Yeah, look, it's not easy to go to jail right now in this country. You know, there are people who are evading jail who have committed dozens, sometimes hundreds of offences. You know, I've come across cases recently where people have had 100, 200, even 300 offences before they finally get sent to prison. You need to get those people off our streets and into prison. That is a way of keeping the public safe, stopping these people from causing so much harm in communities. And I think we should be taking seriously these everyday crimes that too many people describe as minor, like theft, like burglary, like having your mobile phone nicked. These cause a lot of harm, and then when they're being done by a small number of hyper-prolific criminals, time and again, you've got to take action.
Robert Jenrick, superb. Nigel Nelson, also thank you very, very much, gentlemen. Great stuff. Now, if you're in search of some winter sun this year, and who can blame you, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Ready to soak up that holiday sunshine?
Won't we need some cover?
No worries. All sorted.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We have more unsettled weather to come across western parts of the Med through the next few days. There's some heavy, thundery rain pushing into parts of Portugal, including Madeira, also affecting Gibraltar, and heavy rain feeding into northern parts of Italy too. Further east, though, higher pressure here means it's that bit drier, and there'll be a good deal of sunshine too. We also have heatwave conditions building here. Temperatures for some will rise to around 5 to 15 degrees above average. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. This time last week, spring was in the air, but we're definitely back to more wintry conditions at the moment. Still some sunny spells again tomorrow, but it does feel chilly, and the showers, which will continue to feed in, also making those temperatures drop off. Those showers are not just of rain, some sleet and hail mixed in, even a few flurries of snow over the hills of northern England and southeast Scotland. The showers becoming confined to these eastern areas, though, overnight. Elsewhere, largely dry. Clear skies will allow a widespread frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and temperatures across much of England and Wales getting close to freezing, even in towns and cities. And with these showers feeding in, could be icy for Thursday morning across parts of northern England. Not too many showers over northern Scotland. Quite a bit of cloud here, helping to keep the temperatures up. But we will start with temperatures around or below freezing across southwest Scotland and a good part of Northern Ireland. We should also start with some sunshine here. The ice risk across northern England, particularly over the hills, where the showers will continue to have some sleet and snow mixed in. Much of England was, though, will start dry. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southwest England in the morning. The clouds will develop more through the day, and the showers will drift more inland again. So we'll see some over the Midlands, perhaps into parts of East Wales and southern England. The odd heavy one. Still with some hail and sleet at times and snow on the hills, but many western areas will just stay dry. Going to be chilly though, 6 or 7 Celsius, particularly in the east with a brisk breeze. The wind's not as strong as today, but still a noticeable wind chill here. Elsewhere with a bit of sun, we could reach 8, 9 or maybe 10 at best. Friday's a similar day with more showers feeding in on the brisk northerly wind from the North Sea, bringing more showers to eventually the Midlands and across northern England. Again, still with some sleet and hail mixed in. Many western areas staying dry, but everywhere staying pretty chilly. But mostly fine this weekend. Bye for now.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/your say. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
Welcome back. It's 10 to 4 with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, in around about 10 minutes' time, the Amess family, of course, the family of murdered MP Sir David Amess. Remember, on Monday, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, announced that there will be no judge-led public inquiry into the murder of one of the most beloved MPs in the chamber, and the family are about to go into Downing Street to meet with the Prime Minister. We'll have live pictures of that moment as it happens. And I'm still joined in the studio by Nigel Nelson. Nigel, you and I were both at PMQs today. This topic came up. A lot of people since Monday have said this feels very, very unfair. We believe Chris Philp, the Shadow Home Secretary, will be with the Amess family. There could be a press conference later on, depending on the outcome. A lot of people saying it would have been a simple matter of ease to tag this on to the Southport inquiry, to look fully into the circumstances surrounding the failures of Prevent into the murder of Sir David Amess. And you think, I reckon, that Sir Keir Starmer, he might change his position on this. Tell me why.
The reason was because of PMQs. He was asked directly whether or not that there would be a public inquiry into David Amess's murder. He didn't reply. That's always a sign that things are that they're actually thinking about things.
OK, good. Well, we'll go to that when it happens. That's just about to happen at 4. But before that, today is the second day of the Cheltenham Festival, and racegoers are wrapped up warm, enjoying the racing and a drink. Apparently, the drink prices though have gone up 30%. And a flutter. Used to be called Ladies' Day. Well, here's Jack Carson. Last time I checked, not a lady. Jack, have you been on the overpriced bevies?
Well, I'll tell you what, I've had to wrap up. You're right about wrapping up warm, Martin. We've all had to wrap up here because we got snow overnight here at Cheltenham. First time, we believe, since 1974 when more than a centimetre of snow has fallen overnight here at Cheltenham. The ground was still good to soft, they said, by the time we got to the first race. The racing has been able to commence. We've had some fantastic racing, fantastic atmosphere once again here at Cheltenham. That Cheltenham roar, really, just from where we are outside the racecourse at the moment, you can hear it every time a race starts. We're expecting the Queen Mother champion chase in, well, just under 5 minutes time at 4 o'clock. But Her Majesty the Queen Camilla, is here today. She's been, well, a patron of the Jockey Club since last year with His Majesty the King. She's here in attendance today for Style Wednesday. You're right, it's not been called Style Ladies' Day for a couple of years officially now. Style Wednesday, there's going to be a best dressed woman and a best dressed man voted on later today. We've been speaking to a few people on their way in today. Maybe they'll be some of the winners. Take a look. The orange tie today.
Thank you. Yeah, I was dressed by my wife, so yeah, and I'm colourblind, so yeah.
How are we feeling about today, day 2 at Cheltenham? Is it your first day? Were you here yesterday?
No, we were here yesterday. Woke up to snow. Wow, yeah, we didn't really expect that, but yeah, no, absolutely fantastic. A lovely day yesterday, and we're gonna enjoy it. It's gonna be dry for the rest of the day, right?
Talk us through the fashion today.
Thank you. So the hat is by Lisa von Horlen, and they're all local brands. The kimono's by Claire Haggis, again, both local brands to Cheltenham. I'm from Cheltenham, so...
Yeah, I think that guy's got the right idea. I think he's been just dressed by his wife. That's nice and simple, I think. But Her Majesty the Queen will present the trophy to the owner, the trainer and the jockey of that Queen Mother champion steeplechase, which gets underway at 4 o'clock. Another exciting day here, Martin, at Cheltenham.
OK, thank you. Thank you very much. Now let's get live now to Downing Street. Thank you, Jack Carson, because Sir David Amess's family is with the Prime Minister. There we are. That is the Amess family, Katie Amess there, and the mother walking up to Downing Street with Sir Keir Starmer. We'll bring you full reaction to that as it happens. Now it's time for your weather.
Despite the morning rain, it'll be a nice, warm, cosy day ahead. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. This time last week, spring was in the air, but we're definitely back to more wintry conditions at the moment. Still some sunny spells again tomorrow, but it does feel chilly, and the showers, which will continue to feed in, also making those temperatures drop off. Those showers are not just of rain, some sleet and hail mixed in, even a few flurries of snow over the hills of northern England and southeast Scotland. The showers becoming confined to these eastern areas, though, overnight. Elsewhere, largely dry. Clear skies will allow a widespread frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and temperatures across much of England and Wales getting close to freezing, even in towns and cities. And with these showers feeding in, could be icy for Thursday morning across parts of northern England. Not too many showers over northern Scotland. Quite a bit of cloud here, helping to keep the temperatures up. But we will start with temperatures around or below freezing across southwest Scotland and a good part of Northern Ireland. We should also start with some sunshine here. The ice risk across northern England, particularly over the hills, where the showers will continue to have some sleet and snow mixed in. Much of England was, though, will start dry. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southwest England in the morning. The clouds will develop more through the day, and the showers will drift more inland again. So we'll see some over the Midlands, perhaps into parts of East Wales and southern England. The odd heavy one. Still with some hail and sleet at times and snow on the hills, but many western areas will just stay dry. Going to be chilly though, 6 or 7 Celsius, particularly in the east with a brisk breeze. The wind's not as strong as today, but still a noticeable wind chill here. Elsewhere with a bit of sun, we could reach 8, 9 or maybe 10 at best. Friday's a similar day with more showers feeding in on the brisk northerly wind from the North Sea, bringing more showers to eventually the Midlands and across northern England, again still with some sleet and hail mixed in. Many western areas staying dry, but everywhere staying pretty chilly, but mostly fine this weekend. Bye for now.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good afternoon. The A1M in North Yorkshire might be slow going north towards Thirsk. There's debris across the carriageway and they've closed off 2 lanes to move it before junction 49. Derbyshire still clearing up part of the M1 after a lorry fire earlier near Chesterfield. That's 2 lanes shut before junction 29, causing delays near Tibshelf services. Another fire in the West Midlands this morning affecting the M5 South, where 1 lane remains closed to clear the spill approaching 3 at Hales Owen. Emergency repairs Bristol, that's the A3029 Brunel Way going north where there might be a hold-up towards the Plimsoll Swing Bridge. And London, out of town on the M4, there's a breakdown at junction 2 for Brentford on the exit slip but causing congestion from the elevated section. It's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website gbnews.com.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not 1, but 2 sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound? For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. 1 entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message. Or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge. Or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Dubes & Co weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, for a frank and honest discussion with those in power that cuts through the spin and gets to the heart of the issues shaping our nation.
You haven't confirmed that you want to stand as leader, but you haven't ruled it out either.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial. Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
I deliver the dose of reality Westminster needs. That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good afternoon to you. It's 4 p.m. and welcome to the Martin Daubney Show here on GB News. We're back, broadcasting live from the heart of Westminster and all across the UK. On today's show, the Amess family are presently at Downing Street. They just walked in their pictures from a few moments ago. The Amess family meeting the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, at number 10 Downing Street, as you can see on your screens, just days after the Labour Party rejected their demands for a full public inquiry into the beloved MP's murder. On today's show, we'll speak with Sir David's daughter, Katie, after that historic meeting at Downing Street. And as Donald Trump slaps tariffs on Britain and the European Union, I'll set out why our Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, should thank Nigel Farage who he left the European Union and say, 3 cheers, Keir, for Brexit. Welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. So these David Amess's family are presently inside Downing Street. They're meeting with the Prime Minister and their heart's intent, their desire is that there will be a change of position from the Labour Party. You remember on Monday, Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary, laid out why there will not be a full judge-led public inquiry into the murder of Sir David Amess and Katie Amess. Sir David's daughter came onto GB News, their national reporter Charlie Peters, saying she was utterly devastated, betrayed at this. She wants the government to change their mind. Will that happen? Well, earlier on at PMQs, this topic came up, and it did seem that perhaps The Prime Minister may have changed his position. The family just want this to be tagged on to the Southport inquiry, again, to look at how Prevent failed. Not only in Southport, not only in the case of Valdo Calacane, the Nottingham triple killer, but also in missing the individual who killed Sir David Amess. Will the Amess family come out with a triumph, a result for themselves? We'll find out in the show today, and we're hoping to speak with Katie Amess at Downing Street later on. And there'll be a press conference, I believe, later on, depending on how that goes. Get in touch all the usual ways, gbnews.com/your say. But now it's time for your headlines, and here's Katie Bowen.
Martin, thank you and good afternoon. It's 2 minutes past 4. These are your latest headlines from the GB newsroom. Defence Secretary John Healey has met with counterparts from France, Germany, Poland and Italy in Paris this afternoon for more talks on Ukraine. The talks come as Donald Trump's top diplomat, Marco Rubio, has ramped up pressure on the Russian president to accept a 30-day ceasefire deal with Ukraine organised by the US. Rubio says the US hopes to have a positive answer from Russia, adding he would urge Vladimir Putin to end all hostilities so, quote, people will stop dying. He said there's no military solution to the conflict and that the US will speak with Russia today. President Zelensky hailed what he called constructive talks and says he wants to use a potential 30-day ceasefire as a chance to draft a permanent peace plan which could include security guarantees. Sir Keir Starmer hailed Ukraine's backing for those ceasefire proposals as a remarkable breakthrough. Well, Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury, James Murray, welcomed the news of a ceasefire deal.
Well, I think it's a remarkable breakthrough, and it's testament to the work between President Trump and President Zelensky in recent days. And it now really means the ball is in Russia's court. It's for Russia to now respond to the ceasefire proposal, Russia to agree to that deal that's on the table, and we will continue to play our role as an honest broker. So the Prime Minister is looking to convene world leaders this Saturday to continue playing the role the UK has been playing to try and move us towards peace in the war between Ukraine and Russia.
Well, in the last half an hour, Irish Taoiseach Michael Martin has met with President Trump at the White House as part of the Irish government's traditional St Patrick's Day series of engagements. The two leaders are also expected to discuss Ukraine and Gaza. Elsewhere, Sir Keir Starmer says the UK would keep all options on the table to respond to the US President's decision to impose tariffs on steel and aluminium imports. The Business Secretary described Donald Trump's decision to impose those global tariffs as disappointing. The UK steel industry has also warned the tariffs couldn't come at a worse time. A short time ago, Canada has announced $20 billion retaliatory tariffs on the US. The European Union said it is also implementing counter-tariffs on £21.6 billion worth of goods. Sir Keir Starmer told the Commons that the UK would keep the option of retaliatory measures open after President Trump announced 25% tariffs.
Like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. We will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed, but we will keep all options on the table.
Well, Liberal Democrat leader Sir Ed Davey says the UK should respond with retaliatory tariffs.
The UK should be very tough and robust, like the Canadians, like the Europeans. We should have retaliatory tariffs. We have to show President Trump this is bad for the American economy, bad for the British economy and bad for the global economy. Well, Trump is not a reliable ally. All the evidence is very, very clear. That's why we have to be robust. We have to join others, whether it's our Commonwealth allies like Canada, our European allies, and send very strong signals. Our steel industry, our metal industry is really important to our country, and it's so wrong that he should be doing this to one of America's closest allies.
Also today, former Scottish First Minister Nicola Sturgeon has announced she will not seek re-election to Holyrood next year. Ms Sturgeon, who represents the Glasgow South Side constituency, made the announcement today. In a letter to local SNP members, she said she'll be with the SNP every step of the way towards independence, despite stepping down as an MSP. Sturgeon resigned as First Minister in March 2023 after 8 years in the role. And the arrested captain of the Solong, the container ship involved in the crash in the North Sea, is a Russian national, according to the vessel's owners. Humberside Police said the 59-year-old man remained in custody after being arrested on suspicion of gross negligence manslaughter yesterday. A missing crew member from the cargo ship is presumed dead after a search and rescue operation was called off late on Monday. 36 people were rescued and taken safely to shore. Humberside Police said it had begun a criminal investigation into the cause of the collision and was working with the Maritime and Coast Guard Agency. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now let's go back to Martin.
Thank you, Katie. Now, the family of the murdered Member of Parliament, Sir David Amess, is presently meeting the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, at number 10 Downing Street. Wife, Lady Julia Amess, and daughter Katie Amess will be appealing to Keir Starmer to change his mind and back their call for a full public inquiry into Sir David's death. Well, let's cross now to GB News' national reporter Charlie Peters, who is live for us from Downing Street. Charlie Peters, you spoke with Katie Amess earlier in the week when that inquiry was denied by Yvette Cooper. Understandably, she was utterly heartbroken at that. What do we think is going to happen today in that meeting behind you now?
Well, Katie Amess has said in the last hour that she is very emotional and is apprehensive as she approaches this meeting with the Prime Minister. And she also reflected on that letter that her family received from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, on Thursday, after she said there were no additional questions into the state's failures involved in the murder of Sir David Amess by the Islamist Ali Harbi Ali. Now, of course, the state has repeatedly said that there was a criminal trial, there was a prevent learning review, details of which were released last month, and there have also been other assessments that the state has taken to look into those failures. But the Amess family and Katie Amess, really leading the charge for this campaign, have said that there are many questions to be answered, many concerns that they still have. And in the last hour, Katie Amess, speaking to the media, spoke about support she's received from some politicians since her emotional plea on Monday.
Up until a week ago or 2 weeks ago, there wasn't any support, but now I think more people are coming out of the woodwork. Obviously, Andrew's here, he's fully supporting us. Kemi is supporting us. Priti said she supports us. So hopefully now people can see how much devastation this has caused. The wider party and the Labour Party. You know, this isn't about politics, it's about humanity. So we want people from across the government to come forwards and support us, because that's what my dad did. He worked with everybody. It didn't matter that you were Conservative or Labour. You were his friend, his colleague, and he would help you. So we're just hoping that people from across government come out and support us.
Katie, what was your reaction at PMQs when you heard Andrew asking that question to the Prime Minister about a public inquiry into your father's murder?
Well, I'm very grateful to Andrew for asking it, and I don't think he gave any guarantees. He kind of didn't really answer the question. What he thinks might give us answers is possibly not what we think will give us answers. So there's going to have to be a discussion around what he envisages us to be happy with and what we're actually happy with. So I guess in an hour I'll know more, but right now I'm just praying that he's going to change his mind.
That meeting is going on right now, seeking answers to those questions. But Katie Amess also shared with the media in the last hour that several Labour MPs had reached out privately to express their support since that press conference on Monday, when Katie Amess said that every day she wakes up hoping that this is just a nightmare. She said that she was receiving therapy, taking medication, and having an appalling time in her life as she faces so much of the struggle that her family has endured since that horrifying murder in October 2021. But right now, the Amess family and their representatives and supporters are inside number 10 Downing Street, seeking answers to those many questions that they still have over that appalling murder.
Peters there, live from Downing Street. And when the Amess family come out of that meeting, we're hoping to have a word with them, and perhaps there may be a full press conference later on. Charlie Peters, thank you very much for bringing us up to date once again on this story. Well, let's get back now to the studio and talk about this with GB News' political editor Chris Hope and GB News' senior political commentator Nigel Nelson. Gentlemen, welcome to the show. Let's start with you, Chris. Monday, Katie Amess was utterly heartbroken. She came on the show when she was denied that full public inquiry. She said it was totally unacceptable and, quite frankly, insulting, the letter she got from Yvette Cooper. I felt so angry. This was how they felt, and it was dealt with such sadness at the betrayal of people that are claiming to be my dad's friend, just fobbing us off yet again and brushing everything under the carpet. Clearly, the family bitterly disappointed that there wasn't an inquiry afforded to the murder of Sir David Amess in the same way there was the Southport killings and indeed the Vowed O'Callaghan case. They simply want this case to be bolted on to the Southport incident, to allow them to discuss the failures of Prevent and try to find peace and justice. Surely it's an easy win for the Prime Minister to say, yes, you will get that.
It's an easy win, and it's really hard, this topic, I think. Everyone's heart goes out to Katie Amess, that amazing press conference she gave on Monday, deeply moving. So David Amess, we saw when there's questions being raised by Andrew Rosendale in the House of Commons earlier, the camera focused on his coat of arms, which is in the Commons chamber near where he sat. Any MP who dies or murders or is murdered while they're still an MP gets that honour and that privilege, but she's wondering, well, what was it all for? You can say how sad you were about his killing, and yet why not have the inquiry? Looking at what this letter said from Yvette Cooper, it's hard to see how an inquiry would go beyond the findings of what was in the trial and the recently published Prevent review after the Southport attacks. And things cost money, and that is part of the why they can't afford to do it. It will cost millions of pounds. That can be spent in a different way from the public purse. It is really hard to explain that. To be fair to the Prime Minister, his meeting with the family today was arranged ages ago, and they came up honestly with, this is our view on Monday, come and see us on Wednesday. They're not hiding from that decision, and that has to be applauded, I think, by Keir Starmer. He understands, he's dealt with victims all his life, going back to his days as DPP. Difficult conversation to have, and I think, to his credit, he's having it.
Nigel Nelson, you were at PMQs earlier, and when this question was asked of the Prime Minister, you detected perhaps a wavering in his tone. You think there could be leeway, wiggle room for him to change position and perhaps grant the full inquiry that the family so desperately wants?
Yes, because, he was asked directly if there would be a public inquiry and he didn't answer, which is always a sign that things may be changing a little bit under the surface. I think that what has become clear is, like Chris, I feel for Katie, I feel for the family. I was very fond of David Amess. But whether or not after a trial and an inquest that an inquiry directly into this murder would actually reveal any more, I can see Yvette Cooper's point.
Well, hang on a minute. If they missed the killer, the murderer, repeated times, if Prevent once again systemically failed...
That is the next stage.
Then this inquiry is specifically aimed to pick up those shortfalls. Yeah. It's the same way, by the way, as happened with the Vowed O'Callaghan case in Nottingham and the Southport murders. Why is this any different? Why aren't parliamentarians sticking up for one of their own?
The point I was making is looking into this specific murder. I think that if you start looking at Prevent, it's quite clear we need to actually have a proper examination of how Prevent operates and whether it's working. If you were doing that's a whole different ball.
That's what an inquiry would do. What are they afraid of?
Well, it wouldn't be an inquiry directly into one incident. It would be an inquiry into Prevent and into many incidents. So if the family are thinking that is a way forward, that well indeed might be a way forward.
Chris Hope, this just makes people feel that justice is not being served. And the outpouring of the emotion from the family was such, it was overwhelming, it was so powerful. They just want answers. The public will say, why is it any different that the Southport families will get answers and the Nottingham, the Vowed O'Callaghan murder victims, their families will get justice, which everybody agrees is the right thing to do. This could simply be bolted on to Southport. It wouldn't be a full-blown inquiry on its own right, with all the associated costs. It would be an easy win. And I think many, many people feel it would show that they don't care about the Amess family if they don't grant this inquiry.
Bolting on to Southport inquiry was actually criticised by one of the individuals involved in the Southport attacks in the Sunday newspapers, and they were saying there that you can't just clash these two things together. Yes, there's failure to prevent. Ali Harbi Ali did go to prison. He's got a whole life tariff. He's now won't be seen again. The trial is taking place. What more can you learn? And I think it's really. I think these are the choices made in government. We don't have to make. They have got limited resources. It will just take it much further. They have appointed an independent reviewer to look at the investigation and see what can be learned from that. But they can't do another inquiry. And I think, it's really hard for the Amess family to take it. I think it's really commendable that Keir Starmer's meeting the family today. He didn't have to. That letter could have been enough on Monday. He is meeting them. I know and you know the family. You've met them very recently, and it doesn't negate how they feel. But at some point, the government can't do everything everyone wants.
But Nigel Nelson, to be invited into Downing Street and to be told, yes, thank you for coming, but we're not going to give you the inquiry. I mean, how will that move things forward? It may even exacerbate matters. And, in terms of the cost, a lot of people will say, well, we find billions and billions of pounds for Ukraine. We find billions of pounds for foreign farm aid. We find billions of pounds for carbon capture. The relative cost of something like this is chicken feed in comparison. It will give peace and justice, and also it's about protecting parliamentarians at a time where it appears it's never been more dangerous to be one.
Public inquiries are expensive. I mean, even however narrow they are, and they do run into millions of pounds. And what I'm suggesting,
they found 10 billion quid for public sector workers, £500 million for junior doctors.
Yeah, I don't think you can make comparisons with that.
Well, you can if it's about the money.
But certainly an inquiry into prevent, and this is what I'm wondering whether Keir Starmer might offer this afternoon, where he will talk about what they want to do regards prevent, because quite clearly they need to look into that, and whether the family will be happy with part of their case coming into that.
The one thing I'm intrigued about, and I was in number 10 for the Nottingham families, in fact they brought them to your studio to be on air, you interview them. We haven't yet seen the shape of that public inquiry in Nottingham. I just wonder whether the way out is to do something to do with Nottingham. Maybe, because that hasn't yet been established yet. The inquiry has not been established. We haven't got the judge in charge. There's no scoping process yet. Perhaps there could be a way of scooping up the appalling events that led to the murder of David Davis into that inquiry.
So that there's a way of, if you like, splicing the two into one without the associated cost of a totally separate additional report.
But not everyone wants that. I go back again to the Southport victims. There's someone involved in that tragedy said it wouldn't work. There are different lessons to be learned here, and by doing that, you may miss key learnings.
OK, well, that meeting is presently happening. The Amess family in 10 Downing Street meeting with the Prime Minister and the Home Secretary, and we'll have full reaction as they emerge. Will they get the inquiry they so desperately want, or will they once again be disappointed? When that happens, we'll bring you full live reaction. Our man Charlie Peters at Downing Street will make sure you get that as and when that news breaks. Now, thank you, gentlemen. And coming up next, the steel industry have said that Donald Trump's tariffs couldn't have come at a worse time. That's coming up next, but I'll tell you why. Brexit will be a bonus for Sir Keir Starmer. I'm Martin Daubney on GB News, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Aaron, this is a mad idea.
The future is bold. The future is hard, and it requires mad ideas. And we're proud to be bold and thought-provoking.
How are you going to make money out of this?
Well, the Olympics make $4.5 billion in revenue per Olympic cycle. And they're a wildly profitable organization that has never been challenged. So we're very proud to take them on and create something better and more efficient. It's not well known, but 44% of Olympians admit to using banned performance-enhancing substances, according to research funded by the International Olympic Committee and published in a top-tier scientific journal. It's absolutely rife. So 44% of elite athletes admit to using banned substances, only 1% get caught.
Would this not encourage the production of harder drugs, though? You know, steroids that go that bit further?
Absolutely, right? And the goal is to create an environment where research and development are openly celebrated rather than being done in secret. When things are done in the open, we can study those compounds, and the drugs that allow athletes to run faster and jump higher are the same drugs that will allow all of us to be younger and faster and stronger for longer.
If, as you say, 44% of Olympians are actually using this stuff anyway, secretly behind the scenes in a sort of hidden and unregulated way, would it actually look that much different to you or I sitting in the stand watching people run 100 metres? Would they actually do it much faster?
Yeah, because you could have athletes who are in their 30s, maybe even in their 40s, breaking world records. And we're already seeing that with our athletes that we have in training. It's absolutely exceptional. If almost half of Olympians are already using banned substances, they're doing so in secret. They're not using the best available compounds. They're not doing it under clinical supervision. They're doing it to beat the drug testing, not to optimize their results.
The People's Channel.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
You could have £17,777 in tax-free cash to play with this spring. Cash to spend on anything you like. And if that wasn't enough, we're also going to give you not one, but two sought-after designer watches and the latest Mulberry handbag. How would winning that sound?
Oh my God, that's brilliant news.
For a chance to win the cash, 2 watches and a designer bag, text cash to 63232. One entry costs £2 plus 1 standard network rate message, or text bonus to 63232. 5 entries cost £5 plus 1 standard network rate message. Go to gbnews.com/win. Entries start from just £2. Call 0903 681 3232. Calls cost £2 plus your network access charge, or post your name and number to GB12 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrants must be 18 or over. Lines close at 6 p.m. on the 4th of April. Please check the closing time if listening or watching on demand. Good luck.
Welcome back. It's 4:24. It's all kicking off about the Lee Anderson and Steve Bray incident earlier on. More of that later with me, Martin Daubney, here on GB News. Now, let's have a serious topic here because the UK has not been spared Donald Trump's tariff war, as the American president has slapped a 25% tariff on all steel and aluminium exports to the United States. And here's what Sir Keir Starmer had to say on this issue at PMQs earlier today.
On the question of tariffs, obviously, like everybody else, I'm disappointed to see global tariffs in relation to steel and aluminium. But we will take a pragmatic approach. We are, as he knows, negotiating an economic deal which covers and will include tariffs if we succeed. But we will keep all options on the table.
Let's get the thoughts now of the Welsh Secretary of Unite, and that's Peter Hughes. Peter, welcome to the show. What are your thoughts about the tariffs being slapped on what is a strategic British industry?
It's terrible, to be honest with you. And it makes it even worse that we're not actually doing anything back. And I think that's the key to it. I think the UK, if we're not very careful, is going to be a dumping ground for steel throughout the world, not just America, but anywhere else. I think when we're looking at what we do in the UK, we're a proud nation, and we need a steel industry to back that up. And if we don't have a steel industry, our infrastructure is going to fall apart.
Yeah, and I completely agree. I think the British steel industry has been terribly let down by a succession of governments. But Peter Hughes, can I put it to you that a far greater damage has been net zero targets? I mean, we've seen coking steel shut down. We've seen Britain unable to pump out the steel it would like to because we've simply off-sourced our steel making to China.
I think that's the biggest part of it. I think if you did green infrastructure right, it would create thousands of jobs and make the UK the green steel capital of the world. It's the timing of the green steel that we need to make sure is right. The fact that we're looking at a timescale which is 5-10 years advanced, Port Talbot closing the blast furnaces without anything in place for electric arc furnaces, and thousands of jobs going on the back of that, that's the disgrace of it. Green steel, we need the green steel, we need the carbon neutral, but we need it not at a detriment to jobs, not just in the steel industry, but in the oil and gas industry as well.
And Peter Hughes, rather than slapping tit-for-tat tariffs with Donald Trump, let's face it, that could be a world of pain. The European Union is going down that route. What about another option, Peter Hughes? How about we offer to buy all British steel and use it in Sir Keir Starmer's building projects, in housing, in schools, in hospitals, a guarantee to take that steel and use it domestically?
I think that's part of it. If they make it legislation, there's a critical national infrastructure that steel's part of that. It's not a tariff, but every procurement project we've got, you're quite right, should be made with steel which is made in the UK, not sourced in the UK like they're talking about now, because anyone can buy steel and say, well, it's sourced from a UK provider. It needs to be made in the UK by UK steel workers who are probably some of the best in the world. That's what they need to do, and you're quite right. Every infrastructure project we do should be made using steel made in the UK.
Peter Hughes, I think that's a magnificent idea. I think that's the kind of thing that the British public would get behind. If we can't compete with tariffs, let's buy British and let's help the British steel industry out. Peter, I'm joined in the studio by our political editor, Chris Hope. He has a question for you.
Okay.
Peter, I'm just wondering on the political aspect of this. In the House of Commons today, Sir Keir Starmer said that he condemned these global tariffs. No mention of the tariffs on UK steel for exports to America. Is that absence of speaking up for the steel industry a problem for your members and maybe voters in Wales?
I think they need to be doing more. Everyone needs to be doing more for the steel industry. If we're not careful, if we don't do something not to retaliate, to be smarter in what we're doing, where is China going to put its steel when they've got a 25% tariff going into America? They're not going to put it into the EU because they'll put a tariff on as well. So if we're not careful, they're going to be dumped into the UK. That's where we need to be cleverer. We need to be putting infrastructures in place where it's just steel made in the UK is used for steel industry in the UK, and put tariffs on people who are looking to dump steel in the UK, especially the likes of China and India, who aren't making green steel that we're in the UK are having to make going forward.
Now, Peter Hughes, I think a lot of people listening to that will absolutely echo the common sense policies, support British steel, buy British, back those jobs, increase those jobs, don't buy from abroad, don't offshore net zero targets, and then we're simply burning that on different continents anyway. Peter Hughes, and that's the Welsh Secretary of Unite. Thank you very, very much for joining us today on GB News. Now, gentlemen, I thought that's a great conversation. Now, this idea, Nigel Nelson, of rather than trying to go to a trade war with America, a trade war we can't win, a world of agony awaits with the European Union going down that route. They can't compete with America. They'll get annihilated on tariffs. Simply say, OK, this tariff may or may not go ahead. You know, Donald Trump changed his mind like the weather on them anyhow. But let's buy British. Let's support them. Get all that steel into British houses, British schools, British hospitals. That is a vote winner.
Well, I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, unusually. But yes, of course we should buy British. And of course we should buy British steel. I do disagree that net zero is not a way of actually doing it. Because, well, yeah, but what you need there, I mean, in fact, that it was Peter just mentioned it. The electric arc furnaces that are being brought into to the Scunthorpe Steelworks, they're green furnaces, replace the old blast furnaces.
It's lower quality steel. You can't build bridges with it. It's melted down washing machines.
Well, it's only melted down scrap, but there's a lot you can do with it. Use that kind of thing to go for the net zero. We need wind turbines. We need solar farms. Those are the kind of things that we can use British steel for. So buy British and also keep heading towards net zero and try and lead the world, which is a way of actually getting growth in the country.
If it's cheaper, surely price matters here too. So if British steel is more expensive than imports always win. And that's why, because you can't always go buy British. If it means it's more, well, it might be 10% more, 20% more. If that jacks up the cost of, it means subsidise failing industries. We've been there before.
No. What I'm saying is quite simply, we outsource our carbon footprint abroad to industry standards where they pollute, where they use much cheaper labour. We cannot compete with Chinese steel. That's destroyed our entire industry. and we have a fragment, a shell, a husk, just like we sold out the coal mines.
But you're advocating protectionism, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
And is that great, though, for competitors in the UK industry, the fact it might jack up the cost of things being built here?
Sovereign industries, steel sovereign, British steel going into British building projects, and if that costs a bit more, I think voters will go for it. Why not?
Well, why not? Because in the past it has just gone the wrong way with things have been built in a different quality, wrong quality. That's what we're a global market to get the best quality from around the world. That's the idea of it.
Again, I just remind you, we are waiting now, imminently, for a press conference at Downing Street where the family of Sir David Amess are about to come out of that meeting with Sir Keir Starmer. We're hovering over that for full reaction, and Manchola Peters is on the ground. But before we go back, let's continue this conversation, if we could, about tariffs. And I wanted to get a graphic on screen about why I think Britain made the right decision to leave the European Union. Can we get that on screen now? This shows our relative trade association with America. Look at that on your screen. You'll see on the left there, the United Kingdom has a trade surplus of $15 billion a year. Now, that means we take more from America than we export. But look at the European Union there on the right, $149 billion trade deficit. They are dependent on America for export far more than we are.
And Martin, the European Union on the right there has now imposed a £22 billion tariffs on US goods from the 1st of April. We are not doing that because we are trying to be grown up, keep a cool head, to use the language of 10 Downing Street, and try and strike our own wider trade deal.
OK, we're at Downing Street there, and as we can see, we're waiting for the Amess family to emerge from that meeting with Sir Keir Starmer and the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Will the family get the full public inquiry they want? Will it be bolted on to the inquiries, perhaps, of Vowlo Callacane in Nottingham, the Southport killers? We are waiting to see what happens. As we're waiting for that moment, shall we perhaps continue our conversation about trade deficits? Nigel Nelson, I put it to you, Sir Keir Starmer should be grateful that we Brexited, because we won't be getting involved in this gargantuan trade war with the United States. We cannot possibly win. And the writing is on the wall. We generally export services, not goods. So we could and perhaps should knuckle down and not get into a trade war and thank Brexit we're out the EU.
Yeah, I think that before we thank Brexit for anything, we ought to actually be very disappointed in Donald Trump, which is actually what Keir Starmer said in PMQs today. Donald Trump gave the impression that we were going to avoid tariffs, and here we are about to be hit with 25% on steel and aluminium.
Well, we may or may not be. He's changed his mind on tariffs.
He may well change his mind. I mean, in fact, as far as our steel exports to America go, we're actually they are our third biggest market. It's £388 million. It sounds a lot, but actually that is not huge. And we sell more steel to Ireland and Holland than we do to America. So in macroeconomic terms, it's not huge.
There is risk here, I think, for the UK government. Again, looking at those imposition of tariffs, £22 billion by the European Union, £16 billion by Canada of retaliatory tariffs. We don't do anything. Now, that works for a bit. Keeping a cool head is OK while nothing's happening. But at some point, that could be a problem, I think. I mean, and going back to the idea when Tony Blair was called George Bush's poodle before and after, during and after the Iraq war invasion in 2003, that's the risk. We're not in a war situation, but going along with what the US does, not challenging them enough to try and preserve a special relationship as we see fit, it could be it won't last forever, that line.
But I wonder, Nigel Nelson, if Sir Keir Starmer, to his credit, when he went to the White House in the Oval Office and he pulled that letter out of his pocket at the royal visit to the King, he stroked Donald Trump's ego. He got away from there relatively unscathed, and I think that was canny politics. And actually, may I say, I think it's canny politics not to enter a trade war with Donald Trump and go straight back, because now his sights will be firmly set on the European Union. He's called them a cartel, he's called them a mafia, he's called them an organisation specifically set up to damage the United States. Now, of course, he's exaggerating there, but the point is, if we avoid the bullets here, perhaps it's actually actually politically clever. It's astute.
I think it's right not to retaliate at the moment, because it doesn't do us that much harm yet. I'm not sure that retaliation won't be necessary further down the road. It really comes down to whether you can believe Donald Trump when he tells you things like a trade deal is on its way. If a trade deal is on its way and we can get rid of tariffs at the same time, then it's worth holding back. If we get no trade deal, then retaliation could be necessary.
Just to remind you, on your screen now, live pictures of 10 Downing Street. The family of Sir David Amess are presently inside there when meeting with the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, and the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. Will they get the full judge-led public inquiry they demand? We'll find out shortly when they emerge from that door. Chris Hope.
Well, I'm just looking here what Lady Amess said before the meeting with the Prime Minister. She said, the widow, of course, of Sir David Amess, she said he must go away and reconsider the government's position and call us back in to confirm that an inquiry will be granted, not just for our family, she said, but for the security of all public servants and every citizen who deserves to know that when the state fails, it'll be held accountable and that steps will be taken to ensure there's no repeat. So what's happening in that meeting right now, maybe about to be ending shortly, Lady Amess has gone there saying, we want you to reconsider, Prime Minister. What will you do about this? They are furious, the family, of what Yvette Cooper said in that letter. It left Katie Amess, the daughter, of course, of Lady Amess, in complete and utter disbelief, because as you remember, and viewers remember, that she refused to hold a public inquiry.
Yeah, and Katie Amess came on to GB News on Monday, spoke to their national reporter Charlie Peters, who's at Downing Street now, waiting to bring us a full update when that news breaks. She said it was totally unacceptable and, quite frankly, an insulting letter that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, sent to the Amess family, confirming that the government will not order that inquiry and that all investigations to date should satisfy us. Well, I can tell her that they most certainly do not. She went on to say, I felt so angry. This was how they felt. This should be dealt with, and such sadness at the betrayal of people that are claiming to be my dad's friends, just fobbing us off again and again.
What is interesting is, why is Sir Keir Starmer meeting the family now, 2 days after that very, very difficult news? Is something happening in there we don't know about? I mean, Nigel, you were in PMQs earlier. You heard the language there the PM used.
Yes, and it was the fact that Keir Starmer wouldn't answer the question directly. It was a very simple question to answer. Yvette Cooper has answered it, says, no, there will not be a public inquiry into David Amess's murder. Keir Starmer would not answer that question. He had every opportunity to do so. So, yes, it feels like there is some kind of movement. What we don't know, obviously, is behind that black door quite what it is.
And he referred at that point, Nigel, I was also in PMQs today, to the plaque, of course, at the back of the chamber for every murdered MP, and he spoke very solemnly about how he was heartbroken at that moment. The death of Sir David Amess, also referred to the murder of Joe Cox as well, who also has a plaque there in Parliament, and that there was a gravity to his tone, but perhaps he wouldn't announce in chamber if there was an inquiry or not. He's about to go into a meeting with grieving family members, so perhaps we can't read too much into the fact he wouldn't answer the question when pushed in Parliament.
Well, he wouldn't support his Home Secretary and what she's said on Monday, and that's why Nigel's a wizened old observer of these things. He laid the groundwork for what could be a rethink, but I'm really surprised if that happens. I mean, I think they've taken the hit on Monday with this letter, which is very difficult for their family, and it's hard to understand there will be a rethink, but there may well be.
And just to remind you, those are live pictures of the door there at Downing Street. Various people keep coming out. Not yet the Amess family, of course. When they do, we'll have full reaction. It looks like that meeting may be coming towards an end. What's the purpose then, Nigel Nelson, of having a meeting with a grieving family 2 days after refusing publicly to hold an inquiry and then not granting an inquiry anyway? What's the point of doing it?
Well, I think that having it said you're going to meet the family, you should actually carry it out. And also, in respect for David Amess himself, that Keir Starmer certainly knew him. All of us knew David Amess. He was a great backbencher. Certainly, Keir Starmer should meet the family. I think that if it's just a simple matter of restating what Yvette Cooper said, A, they won't be happy, so there must be a little bit more to it.
I mean, some message here from Charlie Peters, our man in Downing Street right now. He is saying to us This is going on a lot longer than expected. The family were told to expect a hard stop of 4:30 p.m. That's why we're waiting on these shots of 10 Downing Street's door. He is surprised it's going on this long. They didn't expect to be in there for that long. They thought it'd be a brief meeting. So, again, we don't know. We'll find out soon enough. But it's interesting that the meeting is still ongoing with Sir Keir Starmer, apparently.
And as we understand, and thank you, Charlie Peters, I've just got those messages too. Thanks for keeping us updated live from Downing Street. We were expecting Nigel to hear if there was a positive result, so if there was a change of position from the government, then there wouldn't be a press moment, a press announcement. And if the family don't get the news they want, then there will be that press announcement. Chris Philp, I believe, is involved in this, the Shadow Home Secretary. He was with the family before they went in. Is he inside that meeting now as well?
No, he's not in a meeting, but he is hoping to hold some form of press conference after this meeting takes place. Of course, the Conservative MPs are rallying around the family. He was one of their own, part of the Conservative family, Sir David Amess. We heard from Andrew Rosendale, of course, a neighbouring MP in Essex, Mark Francois, also very close to the family, and that's why he's saying that. I'm just seeing more messages here from our man in number 10, Charlie Peters. They felt, the family felt, that the PM's answer did leave an opening. They're enthusiastic about that. They also say, the family, that many Labour MPs are reaching out privately to express their support. So it's not just a Conservative, it's all politics here, because all these MPs, they meet with people in their constituency surgeries. They often without any protection. They do it because that's part of their public service. To be attacked for doing that goes to the heart of what is our democracy about.
And that points to the reason, does it not, Nigel Nelson, that the correct thing to do, the gracious thing to do. I know we talk about the money, the costs, but, governments seem to be able to find money for things that they agree with. Surely the humane, the democratic thing to do, the cross-party thing to do will be to give the family what they want.
I think that the government have to actually work out what it would achieve. And at the moment, from what we know from the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, is she felt that the trial and the inquest got the answers that a public inquiry would get.
The family didn't agree?
No, the family doesn't agree, which is why we're talking about the idea of something a bit wider, something that would look at prevent, look at where the failings are, and protect the lives of politicians in the future. I mean, obviously, there was David Amess, we had Joe Cox, a great friend of mine. These things must not happen again.
OK, we're still waiting on that press conference to emerge. Until that, we're going to come back as and when that happens. But before that, if you are in search of some winter sun this year, then here is the forecast for some of the top European holiday destinations.
Can't wait to get in that sea.
Lovely and warm.
Just like the feeling of having great travel insurance.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
We have more unsettled weather to come across western parts of the Med through the next few days. There's some heavy, thundery rain pushing into parts of Portugal, including Madeira, also affecting Gibraltar, and heavy rain feeding into northern parts of Italy too. Further east, though, higher pressure here means it's that bit drier, and there'll be a good deal of sunshine too. We also have heatwave conditions building here. Temperatures for some will rise to around 5 to 15 degrees above average. See you later.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GB News Travel Destinations Forecast.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. This time last week, spring was in the air, but we're definitely back to more wintry conditions at the moment. Still some sunny spells again tomorrow, but it does feel chilly, and the showers, which will continue to feed in, also making those temperatures drop off. Those showers are not just of rain, some sleet and hail mixed in, even a few flurries of snow over the hills of northern England and southeast Scotland. The showers becoming confined to these eastern areas, though, overnight. Elsewhere, largely dry. Clear skies will allow a widespread frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and temperatures across much of England and Wales getting close to freezing, even in towns and cities. And with these showers feeding in, could be icy for Thursday morning across parts of northern England. Not too many showers over northern Scotland. Quite a bit of cloud here, helping to keep the temperatures up. But we will start with temperatures around or below freezing across southwest Scotland and a good part of Northern Ireland. We should also start with some sunshine here. The ice risk across northern England England, particularly over the hills, where the showers will continue to have some sleet and snow mixed in. Much of England, though, will start dry. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southwest England in the morning. The clouds will develop more through the day and the showers will drift more inland again. So we'll see some over the Midlands, perhaps into parts of East Wales and southern England, the odd heavy one. Still with some hail and sleet at times and snow on the hills, but many western areas will just stay dry. Going to be chilly though, 6 or 7 Celsius, particularly in the east with a brisk breeze. The wind's not as strong as today, but still a noticeable wind chill here. Elsewhere with a bit of sun, we could reach 8, 9 or maybe 10 at best. Friday's a similar day with more showers feeding in on the brisk northerly wind from the North Sea, bringing more showers to eventually the Midlands and across northern England, again still with some sleet and hail mixed in. Many western areas staying dry, but everywhere staying pretty chilly, but mostly fine this weekend. Bye for now.
Join me, Nana Akweer, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel. And as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back. The time is 4:48 now. The US President Donald Trump, he's been speaking with the Irish Premier Michael Martin at the Oval Office. Of course, Mr. Martin is the latest world leader to face the music, as it were. We've got some sound here. You can listen in.
Ireland, it's a special place, and he's a very special guy. He did it the hard way also. He served, and then he took a little time off, and then he served again. I've heard about that. That happens on occasion. And he's done very well. And we knew each other from a long time ago. But it's a great honor to have you in the Oval Office and have you at the White House. We have tremendous business relationships with Ireland, and that'll only get stronger. The relationship we have personally and every other way is very, very strong and very, very good. So I just want to welcome you to Washington, D.C. and to our country, and thank you very much.
May I thank you, President. It's a great honour for me to be here to celebrate St. Patrick's with you.
Right.
And I thank you for your hospitality and the warmth of your reception. And I commend you in terms of the work that you're doing, particularly in terms of the pursuit of peace, which we discussed earlier. And I think that's going well. And you really have, in the first sort of 100 days of this government, you've done some extraordinary things very quickly.
Thank you.
Everybody's watching in that respect. So
thank you.
Delighted to be here. It's an honour to be here.
Well, it's a great honour to have you, and special people, very special people. I know a lot of Irish, and growing up in New York, I know a couple of your people that used to live in that beautiful Ireland, and now they're here, but they love your country very much. You know, they have a great feeling toward your country.
They have, and a lot come back for holidays and
they come back.
Stuff like that, and checking out their family, ancestry and things like that. You know.
Great, fantastic people.
Some go to Doonbeg as well. Yeah.
And they go. We love Doonbeg. I love them. I don't know if I'll ever see it again. Maybe I won't, but I think I will. We'll get there. We're going to get there. It's a beautiful place, wonderful place. Any questions?
Mr. President, on tariffs, how far are you worried? President Trump, how worried are you about the counter tariffs from the EU, which were announced yesterday? And also, how worried should Ireland be, given the fact that it has a massive trade surplus with the US, over $50 billion? Neil Martin might be quite nervous about what you're going to tell him today.
Well, I don't think he looks nervous to me. And if he was nervous, he wouldn't show it. No, we do have a massive deficit with Ireland, because Ireland was very smart. They took our pharmaceutical companies away from presidents that didn't know what they were doing. And, you know, it's too bad that happened. It's a tremendous job I give. Look, the Irish are smart. He has smart people. And you took our pharmaceutical companies and other companies, but, you know, through taxation and proper taxation, they made it very, very good for companies to move over there. And we had presidents and people that were involved in this that had no idea what they were doing, and they lost big segments of our economy. The European Union treats us very badly. They have for years. I saw that. I had it out with them in my first term. It did well, but we had to solve other problems, and we did. But European Union's been very tough. And it's our turn, too. You know, we get a turn at that also. But they have not been fair. They sue our companies and win massive amounts of money. They sued Apple, won $17 billion. And they use that for other reasons, I guess, or to run the European Union. So I'm not knocking it. They're doing what they should be doing, perhaps, for the European Union. But it does create ill will. And as you know, we're going to be doing reciprocal tariffs. So whatever they charge us, we're charging them. Nobody can complain about that. Whatever it is, it doesn't even matter what it is. If they charge us 25 or 20% or 10% or 2% or 200%, then that's what we're charging them. And so I don't know why people get upset about that, because there's nothing more fair than that. And we had a problem with Ontario, and they dropped that when I let them know what we were going to be doing. They dropped it immediately, so I'm glad, because electricity, you shouldn't be playing with electricity. It affects people's lives. Actually their life. I mean, it can affect, depending on weather, it can affect their life, so we can't do that. And it doesn't make sense that our country allows electricity to be made in another country and sold into us. Who did that deal for the United States? Okay, I looked at that long ago, and I said that's not something that's very smart. So we've had a lot of bad trade policies, and yet we're doing very well right now. But we're doing well because I won the election. If I didn't win the election, you would have had a very bad period. I think a lot of the stock market going down was because of a really bad 4 years that we had. When you look at inflation and all of the other problems that were, I mean, wars and inflation and so many other problems. But we're going to have very good years. We had, I don't know if you saw a little thing like the cost of eggs, little to you, but big to people out there, down almost 30% in the last few days. We got it down. We did a lot of things. We have a great Secretary of Agriculture, and we did a lot of things that got the cost of eggs down very substantially, and so many other things. A very big thing that I'm very happy with is oil is down to $65 a barrel, and that's faster than I would have attempted. We put on the gas. We stepped in the gas in order to get oil, and what's happening. So we're getting that down, and when energy comes down, prices are going to be coming down.
That's Donald Trump there with the Irish Premier. Let's cross over to Downing Street now, where the family of Sir David Amess are coming out of the meeting with Keir Starmer.
In Southend. We've just finished our meeting with Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, and the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper. They did not agree to announce the public inquiry that the family wanted. But what they've agreed to do is to work through some further reviews with Lord Anderson KC, the independent reviewer, into Prevent. And they've agreed to keep an open mind. And at the end of that process, which the family and our legal team will participate in, we will see where we get to. And they've agreed to keep an open mind. So if at the end of that process there are further questions to answer that the reviews are not able to answer, then we will come back here and we will urge them to order that public inquiry. Katie.
Obviously it's disappointing, because I was praying that the full public inquiry would be launched, and when I asked questions about why it can't be launched, he wasn't really able to answer them. He just said that my case was different to Southport but couldn't tell me how. So that's very disappointing, but he said we can have a small glimmer of hope, and hopefully some of our questions can be answered. Those that aren't answered, we can come back and speak to him about. It just prolongs the heartache that we're going through. Obviously, the best possible scenario would have been a full public inquiry, but I guess we have to cling to that 1% hope that we can get the answers through a different means, and if we don't get those answers, maybe then they'll reconsider.
Might you challenge this in the High Court, judicial review?
Well, what we've agreed to do in the first instance is to work with the government through these reviews. So our legal team will be getting a full set of papers from the government, and we will be involved in that process, Martin, of drawing up the questions. So there's no prospect at this moment of challenge. We want to work with the government, not against them.
Katie, on Monday you said you felt betrayed and angry about this decision. How do you feel now after that meeting?
I still feel the same, but he did say that we could come back if we don't get the answers. So I still feel the same, but maybe
slight glimmer of hope.
Maybe the slight glimmer of hope will come true.
Katie, what would you hope to achieve from the public inquiry? What questions do you want to answer?
We just want to know why this guy that was meant to be being monitored was allowed back into society after one cup of coffee in McDonald's. Why he just was able to say, I'm not a terrorist, and then be released from the scheme, and there was absolutely no follow-up, no further questions. Records weren't kept properly. The admin side of things was just abominable. Nobody passed the notes on to anybody else. There was no follow-up, no follow-through. We just want to know why that was allowed to happen, who made those mistakes, to get the answers to why they were allowed to happen, and to make sure that it never ever happens again.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Hello, how are you?
Okay, and that was the family there of Sir David Amess and their brief addressing the media outside of Downing Street. They had the meeting there with Sir Keir Starmer, Prime Minister, and Yvette Cooper, the Home Secretary. The family were desperately praying for a full public inquiry, and we learned there they will not get that. They will not get a full public inquiry. Their brief did say there'll be no public inquiry, but there will be more reviews into Prevent, and the government have promised to keep an open mind. Then we spoke with Katie Amess, the daughter of the murdered parliamentarian, who said this is very, very disappointing. She clearly looked very, very upset and emotional. She said that she'd been praying for a full inquiry, and the Prime Minister couldn't tell me how our case was different to Southport. She then added, this merely prolongs the heartache, and we are clinging to 1% of hope. We'll have full reaction to this in a moment. First, now let's go back to the White House, where Donald Trump is with the Irish Premier.
People going over there, Mr. VP, do you have anything to say about it? Because you're very much involved. What's going to happen?
Well, we've got some conversations that are happening on the phone and in person with some of our representatives over the next couple of days. As the President said, we think that we're in a very good place where the Ukrainians have agreed to a ceasefire, and we're now going to see whether we can get the Russians to agree to a ceasefire too, and we'll certainly have news on that when we find out that news.
Are you confident that President Putin will keep the ceasefire, considering that he's broken them in the past?
We haven't spoken to him yet with substance, because we just found out and we just were able to get Ukraine to agree. So we're going to know very soon. I've gotten some positive messages, but a positive message means nothing. This is a very serious situation. This is a situation that could lead to World War III. And Biden should have never let it happen. Incompetence allowed this to happen. This shouldn't have happened. October 7th in the Middle East should have never happened with Israel. The horrible leaving, the way they left Afghanistan should have never happened. Inflation should have never happened. You know, we have great inflation numbers, by the way, just got released. Inflation is way down, and it's based on what we've done, and we've done it in a very short period of time. You know, we had virtually no inflation. For 4 years, we had almost no inflation, and when these characters took over, we went from no inflation to the worst inflation probably in the history of our country. So it's very interesting. Go ahead.
Are you going to retaliate against
and by the way, I have to speak of inflation. I love these socks. What's with these socks?
It's in honor of the T-shirts.
I'm trying to stay focused, but I'm very impressed with the VP's socks.
That the United States is recognized as having such
important role in the peace process, and yet half the parties from the Northern Ireland government have decided not to come to St Patrick's Day celebrations.
They haven't, what?
They haven't come over, they're boycotting the St Patrick's Day celebration.
What are they boycotting?
They are talking about your position on Gaza as one of the reasons why they...
Oh, I haven't heard that. I really haven't heard that. Look,
Can I just say, I got to pay tribute to the President on the peace initiatives. The one thing we've learned in Ireland about the peace process that you've just spoken about, and I recall back in the early 90s, when the first tentative steps to get peace in Ireland, people criticised people like John Hume or people like Albert Reynolds, the then Taoiseach. But they kept going. And when we got that ceasefire in 1993, okay, it took a number of years to get the comprehensive peace settlement. But again, the guns more or less largely went silent. The war in Ukraine is a devastating war on young people. And I think that very simple, straightforward narrative is to be commended. We all have children. I mean, we would be shocked at the prospect of young people losing their lives in that number, be they Ukrainian, be they Russian, whatever. Anything we can do to stop the violence, I think, is an extremely positive day. And there will be all sorts of people having qualifications on it and all the rest of it. It's our job then to work on it and to try and build it, Europe, US and everything.
I will say, and thank you for that, but I will say, last week 2,500 young people died while we sit here and talk.
Yeah.
And while they talk about peace, but they've been talking about peace. This should have never happened. This war should have never happened. It would have never happened if I was president. That's what makes me more angry than anything else, because you've had far more people die than they report, than these people report, for whatever reason. But you had far more people. The numbers are far more devastating. You'll find that out someday. And it doesn't affect you very much. They're not Irish, and they're not from my country. They're from Russia mostly, almost all from Russia and from Ukraine. And people could say, why are you doing this? Why are you involved in that? Because 2,000 people a week are dying. And they have families, and they have mothers, and they have fathers, and they have sisters, and they have brothers and friends. And they're dying. And I've seen the pictures, the satellite pictures that we see all the time. And it looks like Gettysburg in its prime, because that was, they say, one of the most horrific battles ever. You have kids lying all over these fields that are dead, because the weapons today are unbelievable, between drones and various types of guns. I'm not even talking about beyond that with the big babies. You understand what I mean? I hate to even mention the name, the nuclear name. I hate to mention it. But you have weapons today that are so powerful. And I see kids every week. I see pictures of kids laying all over the field dead. They're dead, beautiful kids, they're dead. And they're not from here and they're not from where you are, but he's working very hard. We're all working hard to get this thing finished. It's crazy over nothing, and it's not going to go anywhere. It's just a terrible situation. And I think we have a chance to get it done. So we've gotten half of it as a ceasefire, and if we can get Russia to stop, then we have a full ceasefire, and I think it'll never go back to war. I think something will happen.
Can I ask you about Ireland's relationship with Israel? There's been a lot of talk recently. The government are looking to bring in what's called the Occupied Territories Bill, which would ban goods from occupied territories. I know you met with Prime Minister Netanyahu recently. Did Ireland come up in that conversation? Did he raise any concerns about the Irish government?
One thing I'll tell you, you're not from Israel, that's for sure, huh? She's definitely not from Israel. It's an interesting question coming from you. We talk about everything. Israel has been under siege, as you can see, and they had to fight back. October 7th was a terrible thing. People don't like to mention it, but it was a terrible, terrible day in the life of the world. And it's amazing the way people don't mention that, but it was, I've never seen anything like it. Those are other clips I get to see. You know, as president, you get to see clips that you'd rather not see, but I see clips, and that was a terrible day for the world. And we're working hard with Israel. We're working hard to see if we can solve the problem. I will say I just saw 10 hostages, and they were treated really badly. They were really treated badly. I was shocked. I asked them, was there any kindness shown? They were in there. One was in there for 500 days. One was 323 days. I said, was there any, 10 of them. I said, was there any kindness displayed? Like, did they ever, like, say, don't worry, you'll be okay, or give you a little wink, or give you, like, an extra slice of bread or something? And everybody said, all of these people said, zero. It was hatred. It was pure hatred. So, I mean, that's a very deep-seated problem.
Could you give the Taoiseach some advice? Could you give the Taoiseach some advice? Ireland is in the midst of a housing crisis now, and I know you have a lot of experience as a businessman. How can the state build tens of thousands of houses at speed?
You know why they have a housing crisis? Because they're doing so well. They can't produce houses fast enough. That's a good problem, not a bad problem.
That's a very good answer, President.
No, it's true.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU, Mr. President? Mr. President, will you...
Everybody should have that problem. That's okay.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU?
I know this gentleman. He'll get it solved.
Will you put more tariffs on the EU? Will you respond to their retaliation?
Oh, of course I'm going to respond.
You will retaliate
The problem
with more
is
tariffs.
our country didn't respond. Look, the EU was set up in order to take advantage of the United States.
Including Ireland? Is Ireland taking advantage of the US?
Of course they are. I can't, you know, I have great respect for Ireland and what they did. And they should have done just what they did. But the United States shouldn't have let it happen. We had stupid leaders. We had leaders that didn't have a clue. Or let's say they weren't business people, but they didn't have a clue what was happening. And all of a sudden, Ireland has, you know, our pharmaceutical companies and other, this beautiful island of 5 million people has got the entire U.S. pharmaceutical industry in its grasp. And, you know, you mentioned housing and you mentioned other things. I mean, I have property in Ireland, as you know, and I love it. It does great. But I'd like to see the United States not have been so stupid for so many years, not just with Ireland, with everybody. You know, I looked at trade deals. I was telling the group yesterday, I looked at trade deals in term one. It's one of the reasons I decided I had to do this, because somebody had to straighten it out, and I didn't see anybody that was going to. I looked at trade deals that were so bad, I'd actually say, how is it possible that this could have happened? Who would have been so stupid to let these deals happen? For instance, when the pharmaceutical companies started to go to Ireland, I would have said, that's okay if you want to go to Ireland. I think it's great. But if you want to sell anything into the United States, I'm going to put a 200% tariff on you. So you're never going to be able to sell anything into the United States. You know what they would have done? They would have stayed here.
So do you are you planning to lower corporate taxes to match?
He's so lucky that I wasn't.
Are you planning
He's so lucky.
Are you planning to lower corporate taxes to match Ireland? Are you planning to lower corporate taxes to match Ireland?
Well, we are planning to lower taxes, yeah, if the Democrats behave, but the Democrats have no clue. You saw that the other night during the speech. 2 young women were slaughtered by illegal aliens. 1 young man has very serious cancer and many other problems. We look at the people up there, they all had difficulty, very serious difficulty. But when we're talking about 2 young girls, beautiful young girls, Lake and Riley, you know the whole story. That evening was a disaster for the Democrats, in my opinion. And I would mention, and I'd see 2 mothers that were inconsolable as they stood, crying. Their daughters have been absolutely just destroyed, killed, viciously killed. And the young man who loves the police departments, he had cancer and has cancer, very bad cancer. There wasn't from people sitting there, Democrats, there wasn't a hand clap. Nobody stood. They were just stone-faced. These people are sick. There's something wrong with them. There was no standing for anybody. The only thing they liked is when they heard about the death taking place with Ukraine. They were happy about that. They were happy about that. Pocahontas was very happy. She's the one that was slapped. That's why I looked at her. I said, oh, it's Pocahontas. These people are sick. They don't know what's happening in the real world. The Democrats have to get their act together. And if they don't vote, then what you're going to do is you're going to have taxes that are going to go through the roof. You're going to have a very bad time. You're going to have some very bad things happen. And people are going to blame the Democrats. And Schumer is a Palestinian, as far as I'm concerned. You know, he's become a Palestinian. He used to be Jewish. He's not Jewish anymore. He's a Palestinian. Okay.
On tax, there's been a lot of on and off some inconsistency.
There's no inconsistency, only with NBC, which is one of the worst networks on television, by the way. Let me just tell you the inconsistency. I have the right to adjust. And I was called by the automakers, as an example, General Motors, Ford, etc., the big three, the big four, and they asked me to do them a favor. Could I delay it for a period of 4 weeks so that they're not driven into a little bit of a disaster for them? They actually love what I'm doing, but they had a problem. And I'm not like a block that just, I won't delay. It's called flexibility. It's not called inconsistency. It's called flexibility. And I think you want me to be flexible too.
Is flexibility going to be your ongoing view towards?
Sure, I'll always have flexibility, but there will be very little flexibility once we start. April 2nd is going to be a very big day for the United States of America. The United States of America is going to take back a lot of what was stolen from it by other countries and by, frankly, incompetent U.S. leadership, grossly incompetent. I gave you an example of Ireland. I would have never let that happen. Impossible for that to have happened. But we're going to take back our wealth, and we're going to take back a lot of the companies that left are coming back. If you haven't read, we have the biggest computer chip company ever, has virtually all of the market. I didn't call them, they called me. And they called for two reasons. Number one, we had a great election of somebody that they want running the country. And we won in a big mandate. We won every swing state. We won by millions of votes. We won by 2,750 districts to 500. Think of that, 2,750 districts to 500. That's why the map, when you looked at it, was entirely red, meaning Republican. Yeah. Not meaning communist. Meaning so anyway, look, this country needed somebody to defend it. It's this big, beautiful place that was being ripped off by illegal immigrants coming in from prisons, coming in from mental institutions, gang members, gang leaders, drug dealers, pouring into our country with the open borders. I am so angry at the last 4 years at what they've done to our country, what they've done to this country between inflation, but maybe the most that bothers me is that they would allow millions of people to come into our country that are stone cold murderers, killers, drug dealers, the worst gang members, the worst people allowed into our country. And we're now getting them out. We're going to get them out. We're getting them out. I want to thank Tom Homan, by the way. He's doing a great job. And I want to thank Kristi Noem, who's doing a fantastic job. This is a job that's so unnecessary. This should have never happened. This should have never happened. So we're bringing back our country in many ways, not only financially, and financially we'll be stronger than ever before. I think the markets are going to soar when they see what's happening. I'll tell you what, I'm called every day by numerous big companies. I spoke at the Business Roundtable yesterday. They had the largest attendance they've ever had. And these are only the CEOs and chairmen, but mostly the people that run the boss, the people that run the top 150 companies. 150 people showed up. Every single company showed up. First time it ever happened. It's been around a long time. The biggest business leaders. We had a great discussion, went really well. And I want to tell you, there's tremendous optimism out there about our country in terms of regulations being cut, in terms of taxes being cut. And it would be great if the Democrats would do what's right. It would be great if the Democrats would do what's right for our country for a change, because they really are. They've lost their way. They've lost their way. They think that people pouring into our country from prisons, jails, murderers. We have 11,088 murderers that were allowed into, people that murdered people, half of which murdered more than one person in our country. We're getting them the hell out. But who would allow this to happen? Who would allow men to play in women's sports? And they're still fighting it. It's got to be a 95% issue. But they're on television this morning. I see this person, a Democrat, say, we should have the right. No. Men should not be, they're hurting women. They're hurting women very badly. They're hurting women. And they should not, and they're also demeaning women. But who would want these things? And everything's transgender. Everybody transgender. That's all you hear about. Now, that's why we won the election in record numbers. But very importantly, now it is what it is. The Democrats should get with us and come up with good tax policy so that Ireland and other countries can't take our businesses away from us. And he understands exactly. You guys did the right thing. I'm not upset with you. I think I respect what you've done. You've done a great job. But our people did a very bad job.
How advanced are your plans to try and bring some of those companies back to America? Will you be briefing?
Well, I'd love to have him back. I mean, I'd love to have him back, but he'll be fighting me on it.
I mean, what I would say, President, if I could, 1 second, just make the point. It's a two-way street too, and we are investing a lot more in America now. And people may not realise, but Ryanair, one of our biggest airlines, for example, AirCap, they buy more. The two of them together buy more Boeing airplanes than anybody else outside of America. That's a little known fact. It doesn't turn up in the statistics, but Ryanair and AirCap, big aircraft leasing company, Irish company, have done great work with Boeing and huge investments over the last couple of years, you know. So, and there's a lot of Irish companies here now, about 700 odd Irish companies based in America. Glanbia, you know, Smurford, Rock, I was saying to you this morning, Vice President, a lot of them creating thousands of jobs in America. And it's only fair. I mean, that's correct.
That's right.
That's the way it should happen. And I think it's a very good relationship we have. It's a historic one. It's happened over time. We've added value to American companies. We've increased our value. They've got access to the European market, and they did all of that. I understand where you're coming from fully. But I think it's a relationship that we can develop and that will endure into the future, and will change, it will adapt, and you're evolving and you're doing things.
And they've done a very good job. Now, I just will say this, but with all that we've said, we can talk about Ryanair. There's a massive deficit. I don't mean by a little bit. I mean, there's a massive deficit that we have with Ireland and with other countries too. And we want to sort of even that out as nicely as we can, and we'll work together. We're going to work together great, but the deficit is massive. Will you hear this one?
You said earlier that it was now up to Russia in terms of the ceasefire.
Yeah.
Is there anything you can do in terms of pressuring Russia or in terms of sanctions? Or what can you do?
We can, but I hope it's not going to be necessary. Sure, we can pressure. We can do that with Russia. Remember this, Russia took Georgia from Bush, right? They took Crimea from a man named Obama, Barack Hussein Obama, right? They tried to take the whole thing from Biden. They're going for the whole ball of wax. Who was the only one that never took anything from? Trump. And in fact, I'm the one that stopped Nord Stream 2, the pipeline, the biggest pipeline anywhere in the world. I stopped it. It was dead. And then Biden got in and he approved it. Nobody mentions that. What I did to Russia was very tough. I was the toughest ever. But nope, they never took anything from me. They took them from Obama and Bush, and they took it from Sleepy Joe Biden. With Biden, they wanted to take the whole country, but I think I've stopped that, but we'll see. But yeah, there are things you could do that wouldn't be pleasant in a financial sense. I can do things financially that would be very bad for Russia. I don't want to do that because I want to get peace. I want to see peace, and we'll see. But in a financial sense, yeah, we could do things very bad for Russia. It would be devastating for Russia, but I don't want to do that because I want to see peace. And we're getting close to maybe getting something done. We've got Ukraine done, and as you know, I've always said that Ukraine might have been the more difficult party. You were here a week ago when some interesting things happened. I had somebody that didn't seem to want peace. Now he's agreed to peace. So we'll see what happens. Brian?
Yes, thanks.
Thank you.
First, we'll congratulate you on your lower inflation core rates.
Thank you.
Gas prices going down, airline prices going down. This is for the Irish gentleman here, if I can see you real quickly. Welcome, United States. You look great.
Thank you.
Nice to.
Now you feel good.
What's coming next?
Ran on MAGA, Make America Great Again. If you could run on MEGA, Make Ireland Great Again, what would your #1 issue be for people in Ireland right now to make your country stronger? And I've got a 2-part question to that as well.
Yeah. The #1 issue in Ireland is housing, to be honest, and I think it was correctly pointed out. We've got to build more houses. We've got to build them faster to give the young people of Ireland an opportunity to afford to buy a house or to afford to rent a house. We have a lot of other good things happening. That's my number one priority.
Wonderful.
Are you trying to
if
ensure,
I
Mr.
question to this, Ireland is known for very happy, fun-loving people, great attitude, many in this room right now that I've met. Why in the world would you let Rosie O'Donnell move to Ireland? I think she's going to lower your happiness level.
That's true. Thank you. I like that question.
Do
Do you know you have Rosie O'Donnell? Do you know who she is? Do you know who she is?
Yeah.
You're better off not. You're better off not knowing.
Prime Minister, are you expecting to inform the President your views on Gaza, considering that you have diametrically opposed positions on the state of Palestine? Your country is one of 3 in Europe that recognizes the state of Palestine. Are you expecting to discuss this with the President? Are you expecting to inform him?
I don't have to inform the President. He's very well clued into the whole situation. We share the President's, again, unrelenting focus on peace. And he's envoying, the President himself, as soon as he came into office, went to get a ceasefire. We've been calling for a ceasefire for a long time. We want to consolidate the peace. That is our fundamental aim. We want the hostages out. I've been saying it from day one. It's a horrific thing to do, to take someone as a hostage. And I went to Kibbutz Be'eri after October the 7th in solidarity with Israel, and that gets forgotten. And I went a week or 2 afterwards. I saw the kibbutz. It was a shocking thing to see, even though it was a week or 2 after the horror. It was a village. You could see life going on prior to the attack. It was something that will not leave me. And I've been interested in the Middle East for a long, long time. It's complex, and it's all of that. But we do desperately need the hostages out, all of them. It's far too long. Let me finish, please. And then we need a ceasefire. We need to consolidate that. We need a surge of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Because again, there's too many children and too many people starving and so on. Just too many. And it's that humanitarian impulse is what motivates the Irish in respect of its views. And I've always been of the view, it's been our view that a 2-state solution would be ideal. It's become much more challenging and difficult as time has moved on. But that has always been our position. But it's genuinely to have people, because we've gone through this. We discussed this a bit prior to you coming in. We've been through some of this. People hating each other, terrible acts of violence carried out on each other. We came through it. It's our earnest hope that Arab and Jewish people can live side by side. And I've met with people, parents of children who were killed on both sides, called Parent Circle in Israel, and they work to try and bring people together. It's difficult work.
What about the President's plans to expel Palestinians out of Gaza? Are you discussing that with him and giving him your...
Nobody's expelling any Palestinians. I don't know. Who are you with?
I'm with Voice of America, sir.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, Voice of
Can you express how he feels about the President just saying that he would like to take back US companies, pharma companies based in Ireland?
Well, I think the pharmaceutical companies in Ireland are doing very well, as the President has outlined. Again, I think it's about that two-way partnership. I understand fully where the President is coming from. I think there's actually room. Now, we can discuss all this. I think there's room for those companies to grow in America, and many of them, by the way, have already announced fairly significant manufacturing investments now.
It's true, just recently.
Like people like Eli Lilly, for example, who have been a long-standing presence in Ireland since the 1970s. I spoke to the CEO recently.
He's great.
Great guy. And he's announced, I think, about a $50 billion investment in America.
New plans.
But there's big investment, they've had big investment in Ireland. Ireland has served them well too, The workforce is very strong. It's an educated workforce. They've delivered well. During COVID-19, a number of CEOs said to me, a lot of the plants in Ireland were the only plants that never closed for a single day during COVID. Not a single day. Productivity is good and so on like that. But look, there be swings around.
Mr. President, thank you so much. You spoke to Vladimir Putin for quite a while on the phone. So I want to know your assessment. When you take this deal to him now, how do you assess the chances of Putin?
I have no assessment, and I don't go by chances. I think it makes sense for Russia. A lot of downside for Russia, too. And we have a very complex situation solved on one side, pretty much solved. We've also discussed land and other things that go with it. We're not just doing it and saying ceasefire. We don't know what's happening. We know the areas of land we're talking about. whether it's pulled back or not pulled back. You know, we've discussed a lot of the details of what has to go because we don't want to be wasting time. We don't want to be wasting time while people are dying. I mean, as we're sitting here, you probably had 2 people die on that very open field. You know, it's dead flat. It's great farmland, and it's dead flat. There's no protection. The only thing that stops a bullet is a human body. And these are bodies that are young people, and they're stopping a lot of bullets because a lot of bullets are flying across those level fields. Dead flat, no protection whatsoever. It is a disaster. And so I hope he's going to have a ceasefire.
You are using the American leverage to get a lot of political issues.
Well, I don't want to get into that, but if I had to, I'm the only one that's dealt with them successfully. Everyone else, I went through it. Bush didn't deal with them successfully, dealt with them terribly, got ripped off. And Obama was a disaster. You know, they have with Obama, he gave them sheets, and I gave them anti-tank missiles. You know that, right? It's called Javelin. You know the Javelin? I'm the one that gave them the Javelins. People don't say that. And then they say, oh, Trump has a great relationship with Russia. I'm the one that gave him the Javelins. Obama gave him sheets. That's an expression. He gave sheets, I gave Javelins. So,
Mr. President, how worried should the undocumented Irish be about your administration that you don't round them up and send them home again?
Oh, I think the Irish love Trump. We won the Irish with a tremendous amount of vote. I want to thank you very much. We won in the 80s with Irish. I got the Irish vote. I think I have it locked up pretty good unless I did something very stupid, like drained your company, your wonderful place of all of its companies. If I drained Ireland of all of the companies, maybe I'd lose the Irish vote. I don't know. But right now, no. I love it. I've been there many times, as you know, yes. And we don't want to do anything to hurt Ireland. We want to, but we do want fairness, and he understands that. No, that's enough, Kelly. Thank you.
Was there anything that the teacher could say to you today that would dissuade you from going ahead with the
I can't hear.
Mr. President, it's Irish American Appreciation Month. You've named it there. Who's your favourite Irish person?
Oh, there's so many. Are you kidding me? Well, I do happen to like your fighter. He's got the best tattoos I've ever seen. I don't know if I'm a big, but that.
Conor McGregor.
Conor.
Boy, you have. Well, Conor's great, right? You know, talking about Conor, but you have a lot of great Irish fighters, actually. Great fighters. I don't know what that is, but Ireland's always had a lot of good fighters. You know why? Because they're tough people. They're smart people and they're passionate people. And they really have been over the years. So many. I think your father was a great fighter, right?
He was. You did.
Wow. And yet, look at you. You're so smooth and so.
He was a very good defensive boxer.
He was a really good.
He was a good boxer. Yeah.
Right,
He
yeah,
fought for
I heard
Ireland.
that.
Boxed for Ireland. And
Yeah. That means you genetically, I'm not going to mess around.
Do you follow any Irish golfers?
Okay, let's a couple of more from somebody that didn't ask a question. Yeah, please go ahead.
Mr. President, should Apple go back to the US from Ireland?
Who?
Apple?
Oh, Apple's been treated very badly. Look, Apple had tremendously bad luck. I thought they had a very good lawsuit, but they lost.
We fought with them.
$16 billion. $16 billion, and they're after a lot of our American companies. See, that's what's unfair. It's a European Union. I'm not blaming you. I'm blaming the European Union. The European Union's gone after our companies, and Apple's a great company, and they have to give $16, $17 billion on a lawsuit that I didn't think was a good lawsuit. No, that's not good. No, the European, we have a problem with the European Union. They don't take our farm products. They don't take our cars. We take millions of cars, BMWs and Mercedes-Benz and Volkswagens and everything. We take millions of cars. I said to Angela Merkel at the time, I said, Angela, how many Chevrolets do we have in the middle of Munich? Why, none. I said, you're right, we have none. That's the way it is, we have none. No, I'm not happy with the European Union, I want to tell you. And, and we're going to win that. We're going to win that financial battle. It's a financial battle.
European cars, Mr. President?
tariffs on European cars? Is that something you're going to consider?
Oh, absolutely, I will do that. Yeah.
Mr. President,
Think of it, they have millions of cars coming in, millions and millions of cars. One of probably the largest. Japan's very big too, but and they don't accept our cars. We make great cars. They don't have our cars, but we have their cars. They don't have our farm products. We have the greatest farmers in the world. They don't accept our farm products, and we accept theirs. So, you know, things are going to change unless they do what they have to do, and they know what they have to do. This is not going to be a tough battle. In my opinion, not going to be tough. Just like when Ontario charged us, everybody said, oh, they just charged. I said, this will be one in 1 hour. And they announced what we were going to do, and they withdrew their little threat. And what they don't say in Canada is that 270%, have you ever heard that? We have tariffs on dairy products from Canada of 270%, going up to 400%. You never hear that. Canada's absolutely one of the worst. And we, when I say worst in terms of charging tariffs. Their dairy products, they charge our farmers 240, 250, 270, and 400%, okay? Think of that for dairy product. And we charge them like peanuts. You know why? Because we've been improperly run for so many years. I had that all settled in my first term. But then, of course, Biden, you know, he let everything go to hell. One of the things we did is we took from China hundreds of billions of dollars, and I have great respect for President Xi. But he understood that. He understood it was a one-way street, and you can't have a one-way street. Okay. One more question.
Can you say which countries you might target in your next travel ban?
Say it.
Can you say which countries you might target in your next travel ban?
Wouldn't that be a stupid thing for me to say? I said, which countries am I going to target for the next travel ban?
As part of the,
can you believe somebody would ask that question?
As part of the
tariffs specifically you're going to put on Ireland?
Well, we're going to talk. We're going to be talking really to the European Union. You know, I will tell you this one little. We'll end it with this. So I have a property, a big property in Ireland that you know well. It's one of the most highly rated hotels in all of Europe. It's beautiful. Doonbeg. It's a beautiful 600 acres on the ocean, and everybody knows it. And we have a beautiful hotel. And I was going to do a project there, a big expansion of the place. This was when I was a civilian, before the presidency, before I even thought about the presidency. But I was going to do a really beautiful expansion of because it does very well. And I got the approvals from Ireland so quickly. They were so professional. They wanted it. You know, it's economic development, it's jobs, it's construction jobs, a big expansion, beautiful expansion. But I was told something that bothered me. They said, sir, you also have to get approved by the European Union. I said, why do I have to go to the European Union to expand a hotel that's in Ireland? They said, well, that's the way it is. I say, well, shouldn't that go fast? They said, no, it'll take at least 7 years. You gave me the approval in about 4 weeks. It was a beautiful professional. If you took 4 years, you wouldn't have done a better job. You know, everything was done environmentally, everything. There's no reason to take very long. I had everything from Ireland in 4 weeks. And then I hired somebody. He said the process will be from 5 to 7 years. And I said, oh, really? And then I found out that they weren't playing games. Now think about how bad that is for your country. So that was my first experience with the European Union. And I dropped the project. I just said, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to go 7 years to expand something. But I have to, I'll hand it to Ireland. You were so professional, so good. But I don't know why. European Union had to approve it. Yeah. And with them, it was deal. And that's the European Union. So it was a very bad experience I had.
Just say, President, you have the distinction of being, I think, the only president that has physically invested in Ireland.
That's
through your Doonbeg.
And it's been a good investment.
And I mean, for anybody, you should go there. It's just stunning.
I love this.
No, I mean, seriously, even if you don't play golf, I mean, it is a stunning landscape. Yeah. Your people have restored it very well, and our people are going to continue to work with you on that piece to do it all sort of effectively and so on like that.
They've had a great relationship.
But it is and the local people, my local councillor Rita McInerney texted me last week to say, tell President Trump to thank his family for the way they've worked with the local community and for the work that they've done.
I love Rory. I think Rory's great. He's a great golfer. He just won 2 weeks ago. He's a great guy. I played golf with him 3 weeks ago, and he's really a fantastic player. He's in good form, too. When he played with me, he played very well, I can tell you. No, Rory certainly is one of the favorites. He's always going to be one of them. He's a very talented guy. He's a very good person, too.
Are you planning to visit Dubai, Mr. President?
I will. I'll get there sometime. I hope soon. In fact, if we meet, we'll meet at Doonbeck. Okay? But I hope to be able to get there.
Mr. President, does America have a future in NATO?
What's that?
Does America have a future in NATO?
Well, NATO has to treat us fairly. If they pay their bills and if they do what they're supposed to do. When I first got involved with NATO, as you know, they weren't paying their bills. There were 28 countries, and most of them weren't paying. And I got them to pay. And they paid billions and billions of dollars. I made a certain statement that I'm not going to be involved with NATO unless you're going to pay your bills. And I was asked a question, if we don't pay, are you going to help us? I said, no, if you don't pay, you're saying you're delinquent. A real estate term. You're delinquent. You're not paying your rent. You're not paying your bills. If you're not paying your bills, I'm not going to help. And everybody we took in, your Secretary General will tell you, he was very generous to me. He said, I've never seen anything like it. Money came in by the billions and billions and billions of dollars, and NATO became much stronger. Now, NATO's expended a lot of that money in fighting this horrible war, and it's too bad they had to do that. But they had the money from me. I was the one that got people to pay. The countries, most of the countries were not paying, or they were paying a very small amount. So we'll see. But NATO can be a force for the good, absolutely.
Would you like to see Ireland join NATO, Mr. President?
That's up to Ireland.
Well, do you think Ireland and the EU are too close? Do you think that perhaps, like you said,
We are very close.
No, Ireland and the EU. Do you think there's too close a relationship there? Do you think there needs to be a separation, like you said, if you can't get planning permission when you can get it in Ireland, but you can't get it in the EU? Do you think?
Well, look, I can just tell you about my personal experience. That Ireland treated me very well, and the EU was terrible, and they stopped really a magnificent addition. It wasn't a big deal from the standpoint of the world. It wasn't like the things we're talking about now, but it would have been a very beautiful addition. And they stopped it, which is bad for Ireland. And I don't know why. I don't know why it would take 5 to 7 years to get something approved, but that's what it was. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We're headed out. All right, headed out.
And that was Donald Trump there with the Irish Premier Michael Martin in the Oval Office. A quite astonishing press conference. Volodymyr Zelensky left empty-handed. Keir Starmer did a charm offensive, I think, there. Michael Martin just saw the Irish economy absolutely ransacked. Absolutely ransacked. Quite simply, when he was asked, is Ireland taking advantage of the United States of America, Donald Trump said, of course they are. We had stupid people in charge. First of all, he said Ireland took away our pharmaceutical industry. He then went to talk about Apple. Now, it's worth pointing out, before we get some analysis from Chris Hope and Nigel Nelson, Ireland is almost entirely dependent on foreign tax receipts for its corporation tax. 85% of all of Ireland's corporation tax receipts, 23.8 billion euros, comes from foreign companies. The huge chunk of that comes from Google, from Apple, from pharmaceutical companies, from America. Donald Trump there on national television to the world, I think just said, we want all of that back. The Irish Premier wished him a happy St. Patrick's Day. I think he had a very, very, very unhappy St. Patrick's Day. Well, it's actually next Monday. Chris Hope, let's bring you in. A lot of people thinking Donald Trump puts America first. By Jove, he put America first. I think the Irish Premier just watched his entire economy getting torn apart in front of his very eyes.
Verbally, certainly. Let's see what he does. Again, with Trump, look at the language, be shocked by it if you want to be, but look at what he does. He's a businessman who says things to get results of the deal. That's what he wants here. Yeah, that was shocking. I think that was the equivalent of going to headmaster study for a caning like a naughty schoolboy. He really absolutely just laid into Ireland, talked there about, he said at one point, if I drained your country of all its companies, would I do that? He wants to be fair to Ireland. He's threatening to drain Ireland of its big US investors. You mentioned Apple there and others. I mean, I'm sure that won't happen, and he doesn't want to damage his own interest in Ireland, but he clearly has no love at all for the European Union. He talked there about trying to expand his hotel, Doonbeg, in Ireland. He said he got 4 weeks planning approval in Ireland, 7-year wait in the EU, so he called it off. He can't... And also, by the way, he did say he's going to escalate the tariff war with the EU. Don't forget, that's the big news today, is what the EU are going to do. Get ready. US is coming too.
And the point there, Nigel Nelson, Ireland is in the European Union, and yet they have a very highly beneficial tax regime, not at all like the level playing field. In fact, the kind of thing that the United Kingdom probably should and could have done post-Brexit. That attracted a huge amount of American big tech and American core, American pharma, to a favourable tax regime. Donald Trump, on national television, world television, just kicked that to matchwood.
Yes, he did. However, he might well upset quite a few voters by doing it. I mean, bear in mind that the close relationship between people in America and people in Ireland, there are more people of Irish descent live in America than live in Ireland.
Yeah, but he's saying bring the companies back to America, bring the wealth creation back to America.
Yes, but
they would take that.
Yes,
they're offshoring wealth.
But the Irish voters in America won't be terribly pleased on actually destroying the Irish economy. So when President Trump talked about draining Ireland of all its companies, was he joking? It sounded like a joke, but you'd never tell with President Trump. It may not have been. I did quite like Michael Martin trying to come back and say, look, we've got Ryanair. Ryanair buys Boeing planes. Please don't beat us with any more.
I mean, it really was, though, wasn't it, like a pea shooter against a tank at that point? Because Donald Trump said, we would love to have these companies back, but he'll fight me all the way. And he pointed to Michael Martin, who looked like he'd been facing up to the silverback of all silverbacks. And I just felt there that Donald Trump invited him in. It was all smiles, some happy Paddy's Day, but by the way, we're going to take everything back from you. And if the European Union...
equalise the relationship as he sees it.
And if the European Union go to war with us, of course, Ireland, the part of that, he's going to double down. That was a pasting, I felt.
It really was. I should explain to the viewers and listeners what happened there, because I was in that same room about 10 days ago. Basically, all the journalists pile in and lean forward, and Trump simply goes around selecting faces to answer questions. Michael Martin sat there, and it was very hard to know what he should do, because with Keir Starmer, it wasn't as brutal as that. It was brutal, of course, with Zelensky, and that was a real walloping, I think.
That's a really weird way of doing international diplomacy, isn't it? To try and do the whole thing in front of the entire world.
Yeah, he looks around all these journalists, doesn't know who anyone is. He called me for a question. He had a nice face, he said, but you don't know who he's going to call next, and it's completely random what he's been asked for. But extraordinary things there. Should Ireland join NATO? Up to Ireland, he said. And almost at the very end there, a question about Irish Brexit. Should Ireland leave the European Union? Again, he didn't want to go there. But I think the question here of Ireland, and they are taking the sins of the EU were visited on Ireland by Donald Trump just then.
And Donald Trump said, I think the Irish love Trump. That may change, Nigel Nelson. But he said, we don't want to hurt Ireland, but I'm sure he knows where we're coming from. Cue, the camera went on to Michael Martin, who I just thought was looking hot, looking sweaty. Just to let you know on your screens now, that is the collective of the European Union defence secretaries. This is the five of them. United Kingdom are there, along with France, along with Italy, along with Poland, along with Germany. Live pictures there. Our defence secretary is there. We'll come back to that in a moment. Let's get back, can we, to the extraordinary Donald Trump situation there. And actually on defence, Chris Hope, the Irish Taoiseach kept saying, well, we want peace, we stood firm all along. And I just kept thinking, hang on a minute, you don't put a single euro into NATO. You've got no skin in the game. You've been very critical of Donald Trump's America all along, talking in some of the most hostile manner, but they don't put a single euro forward. What are they talking about? Talking to...
And the UK does. 2.5% of our defence budget, of course. I mean, it's spent on defence, and much that goes to NATO. They don't spend money on NATO in that defence umbrella. They also, I don't think, are involved in the coalition of the willing, which is what this meeting there is about. This is I think John Healey, our Defence Secretary, should be there amongst the five. Again, it's in French. I think we can't quite get a translation, but this shows how, while all this is going on, the world is trying to bring peace to the Ukraine war.
OK, we have to go to a break now, but shortly we'll go back to Charlie Peters, who interviewed Katie Amess for us at Downing Street. That's next.
Afternoon, welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. This time last week, spring was in the air, but we're definitely back to more wintry conditions at the moment. Still some sunny spells again tomorrow, but it does feel chilly, and the showers, which will continue to feed in, also making those temperatures drop off. Those showers are not just of rain, some sleet and hail mixed in, even a few flurries of snow over the hills of northern England and southeast Scotland. The showers becoming confined to these eastern areas, though, overnight. Elsewhere, largely dry. Clear skies will allow a widespread frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and temperatures across much of England and Wales getting close to freezing, even in towns and cities. And with these showers feeding in, could be icy for Thursday morning across parts of northern England. Not too many showers over northern Scotland. Quite a bit of cloud here, helping to keep the temperatures up. But we will start with temperatures around or below freezing across southwest Scotland and a good part of Northern Ireland. We should also start with some sunshine here. The ice risk across northern England, particularly over the hills, where the showers will continue to have some sleet and snow mixed in. Much of England and Wales, though, will start dry. Some good spells of sunshine for South Wales, southwest England in the morning. The clouds will develop more through the day, and the showers will drift more inland again. So we'll see some over the Midlands, perhaps into parts of East Wales and southern England. The odd heavy one. Still with some hail and sleet at times and snow on the hills, but many western areas will just stay dry. Going to be chilly though, 6 or 7 Celsius, particularly in the east with a brisk breeze. The wind's not as strong as today, but still a noticeable wind chill here. Elsewhere with a bit of sun, we could reach 8, 9 or maybe 10 at best. Friday's a similar day with more showers feeding in on the brisk northerly wind from the North Sea, bringing more showers to eventually the Midlands and across northern England, again still with some sleet and hail mixed in. Many western areas staying dry, but everywhere staying pretty chilly, but mostly fine this weekend. Bye for now.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
I'm Christopher Hope. From pop stars to politicians, I'll interview anybody in a pub who's got a political opinion. Join me every Friday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube or gbnews.com, or wherever you get your podcasts. This is GB News, the People's Channel.
This is Britain's Newsroom, where your voice matters.
It's just astonishing. With expert analysis and honest opinion, we don't just keep you informed.
We bring you unique perspectives you won't see anywhere else.
Can't argue with any of that. When the news happens, it happens here.
On Britain's Newsroom, weekdays from 9:30 a.m.
Only on GB News.
Welcome back, and on an action-packed show, let's head back now to Downing Street because Katie Amess has been speaking to Charlie Peters after the Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, rejected a public inquiry into the murder of her father, Sir David Amess.
So, Katie, what happened in your meeting today?
Basically, the Prime Minister just said that he's not going to hold a public inquiry for us and that we should meet with Lord Anderson, ask him these questions that are unanswered for us and see what answers he can come up with, and any that he can't come up with, maybe they can figure out something else to answer those questions.
Obviously, it's not the response you hope for today, but are there some positives? Is there some hope after that meeting, which went longer than we expected?
Yeah, it did actually. He said there's a glimmer of hope. He's not shutting the door.
Shall I take that?
Yeah.
Sure. Look, obviously the family had set their sights on Sir Keir changing his mind today and announcing a public inquiry. That was never going to happen. That's not how governments work. The best we could hope for today was to shift them from the letter that they wrote on Monday saying there will not be an inquiry, and we believe we succeeded in that. today. Now, it's obviously easier for the advisors to see that, and sometimes you have to read between the lines. Now, it's quite right that we don't raise the family's expectations, but there is a process that we're going to work through. We will work with this independent prevent reviewer, Lord Anderson KC, and the family's legal team, and I will work through that process with the family. And the Prime Minister said today that then the family, if they're still not satisfied with the answers that come out, which they won't be, because the witnesses will not be spoken to under oath with the documentation. There will be questions. The only way to get those answers will be through a public inquiry. But we will work through this in stages. It's difficult for the family to see the positives now, but we are in a different place today after this meeting. And Sir Keir said he was impacted by the meeting, and all of us spoke on behalf of the family as well. I think we have shifted the mountain a little bit, and that's all we could ask for today. And now it's time to roll our sleeves up and get to work on behalf of this family.
Katie, can you recount some of what you asked the Prime Minister today, what you told him today? What was that conversation like?
Well, we just told him how devastated we are and how ruined our lives have been since October 2021. And we just pleaded with him, could he help with some of our pain and put us out of this torment of knowing my mum feels like we let Dad down because we didn't get the inquiry announced. And I just asked him why he could launch an inquiry into Southport and not into Southend.
It's completely illogical.
And what did he say to that?
He couldn't answer me.
There's no good answer to it. He tried to say there are different cases, there are differences, but there is no logic or rationality to that question.
He just told me they're different and he wasn't going to go into it.
On Monday, Katie, you said that you are scared to go outside. You're scared to be alone. Does that feeling persist after that meeting as well?
Well, yeah, because I'm not any safer. He's not blowing the whole thing open and investigating what happened. And I mean, are any of us safe? We know these people who are going to commit terrible crimes are being let go by the scheme that's meant to be monitoring them. Are any of us safe?
You also said on Monday that you felt as though the failure to have a public inquiry was protecting people and not ensuring accountability. Did you raise that in the meeting as well?
I did not, did I?
I raised that in the meeting, though, Katie.
Yeah, you did.
We made the point very powerfully that there have been 11 terrorist incidents since 2017. That's more than one a year, in which the killer has been a lone wolf operator who's already been known to prevent.
Yeah.
And that has got to be looked at. It is illogical and irrational to have an inquiry into Southport and not into Sir David Amess's death. They are the same thing.
And Katie, as you go away and prepare to work with Lord Anderson on this review, what is your message going to be to the government while you go away and do that work?
Well, we need to make sure that we get the answers to all the questions. We're not going to have a watered-down version where some things are answered and some things aren't. We will get the answers to the questions that we want answered. So if we don't, then we're going to figure out a plan B and a plan C and a plan D.
We will not be giving up. There will be no justice for Sir David until we've got all the answers that this amazing family need and deserve.
Thanks all. Thanks very much.
An astonishing interview there, Charlie Peters with Katie Amess, Nigel Nelson. A 1% glimmer of hope. Will that be enough?
Well, not for the family. They still want the answers to their questions, and they talk about the mountain shifting a bit. So the next stage will be to talk to the independent prevent reviewer, Lord Anderson. They will then be able to ask the very questions they asked Keir Starmer to him. Question is, will they be happy with the answers? But I think what we've seen is a slight shift in the right direction.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nigel Nelson. What an astonishing show today. We had Trump, we had Katie Amess. Incredible. Up next, it's Jubes & Co, the fierce debate show in town. And then later on, it's Farage with Chris Hope tonight. But now, here's your weather. Have a fantastic evening.
Heavy showers first thing will be followed by a warm, cosy day. Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Afternoon. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. This time last week, spring was in the air, but we're definitely back to more wintry conditions at the moment. Still some sunny spells again tomorrow, but it does feel chilly, and the showers, which will continue to feed in, also making those temperatures drop off. Those showers are not just of rain, some sleet and hail mixed in, even a few flurries of snow over the hills of northern England and southeast Scotland. The showers becoming confined to these eastern areas, though, overnight. Elsewhere, largely dry. Clear skies will allow a widespread frost across Scotland and Northern Ireland, and temperatures across much of England and Wales getting close to freezing, even in towns and cities. And with these showers feeding in, could be icy for Thursday morning across parts of northern England.